You allowed out?
Don't want tonight.
All right.
All right, you ready? All right. All right, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Warminster Township Board of Supervisors meeting for Thursday, April 18th, 2019. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Mr. Schuster, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody remain standing for a moment of silence to remember those men and women fighting for us both at home and overseas. Thank you. All right, before we get into announcements, I'd like to announce that there's an executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss union negotiations, personnel matters, and matters of litigation and potential litigation. With that, I'd like to open to supervisor announcements. Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same thing I've been announcing every month. There is a Civil War reenactment coming to the Warminster Community Park. It's called Battle of the Wilderness, No Turning Back. It is Saturday and Sunday, May 4th and May 5th. Tickets are available and they are free. This is a free event. Tickets are available at www.28th, P as in Papa, V as in Victor, I as in India.net. Just to read you there right up here, the 28th Pennsylvania Historical Association, 4th Texas, and the Millbrook Society are hosting a first-class Civil War reenactment featuring actions from the Battle of the Wilderness. Warminster Community Park is an incredible venue, which everybody up here knows that, which is ideal for a Civil War reenactment. All participants and spectators, please use the special event entrance, which is located at 350 East Bristol Road. And again, the schedule they have here is essentially Saturday, May 4th, 9 a.m. To 5 p.m. It says Saturday's battle will be at 2 p.m. And then Sunday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And Sunday's battle will be at 1 p.m. So I'm assuming in between all of that time, you get to see them in action in their encampments and things of that nature. And that is all that I have. Thank you.
Mr. Monroe, can I just ask a quick question regarding that event?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to have tickets to be able to watch the event?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think they're trying to get an idea as to a number of people that are going to be coming. But no, I think you can just come to it just says here, come in through the Bristol Road. So I think if there's a lot of people coming, they want to be able to control the flow coming in through Bristol.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. Ms. Frescatore.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have announcements on behalf of our Parks and Recreation Department. We have upcoming workshops and classes. Please register early. Downsizing workshop, get your home ready for sale, 50 decluttering tips. Thursday, May 9th at 6:30, $15 a person. American Red Cross babysitting classes, Saturday, June 1st through 9th, June 1st, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., $68 a person. Protect yourself from scams. There's plenty of them out there. Monday, June 3rd, 6:30 p.m. That's free. And Walk with a Naturalist, Saturday, June 22nd at 8 a.m. Know your Medicare options, June 10th, 6:30, that's also free. Volunteers are needed for community cleanup. Join the PA Beautiful movement, April 1st through May 30th. Choose a local park, school, roadway, or public facility in the township, and we'll provide trash bags, gloves, safety vests, and certificates for all participants. It might be a nice community service event for anybody that's looking to go to college, teenager, if you have teenagers, what have you. Great community service projects for any individual organization. Invasive species clearing, that's Saturday, May 18th with the help of the Environmental Advisory Council. The Warminster Day, volunteers are needed to make this event a success. And we have that on Saturday, June 8th at 11 to 4. It was a really nice event last year, and I expect it to be a good one again this year. Discount tickets for the movies, summer tickets for amusement parks, local attractions. You can call the office or check online. The tickets are sold 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., Parks and Rec office in Warminster Community Park. Rubber Ducky Regatta tickets are now on sale, $5 a duck or $20 for 5 ducks. Friends of Warminster Park's Hometown Hero banners are available now to participate along Veterans Way in Warminster Community Park. For more information on all these events, www.friendsofwarminsterparks.org for the hero banners. The reminder, bike and hike trail safety, slower moving traffic always has the right of way. So any information on any of these programs, go to the Warminster Township website or 215-443-5428, Warminster Community Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frescador. Mr. McKee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I have is dovetailing on to yours. I would like to thank everyone for coming out to the casino night back in March for the Friends of the Park. It was a huge success. I think we raised $5,200, Karen said, and that money's going towards things that'll go along with the new squirt park that's going to be installed in the park. So thanks again to our sponsors and everyone that came out. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. McPhillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day will take place next Saturday, April 27th from 10 to 2. There's drop-off locations all throughout Bucks County. I'm going to have the opportunity to travel with Bucks County District Attorney Matt Weintraub to visit many of those locations. In fact, around 12:30 next Saturday, we'll be here in Warminster at the Warminster Police Station. So if you have any unwanted medications that you'd like to drop off, you can stop by the police station, say hi to the District Attorney or one of our police officers. And if you don't want to talk to them, you can say hi to me. But what you want to remember, though, is every day here in Warminster is a take-back day. Every day you can take back your unwanted, unused prescription medications. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McPhillips. Just have the new businesses that came into town over the past month, like to welcome them. Best Line Equipment, which does construction equipment and rentals and sales at 900 Lewis Drive. JAG Security Services, which provides security services for home and businesses at 780 Falcon Circle. And also at 780 Falcon Circle is Liftex Corporation. They do industrial lifting supplies and equipment. And last but not least is Sushi X, a sushi restaurant at 291 East County Line Road. As always, we thank these businesses for calling Warminster home, and we wish them all the best. And with that, we can move on to our presentations. I'd like to welcome now to the podium our Library Director, Ms. Tracy Reed.
Hi, thank you guys for having me here tonight. It's been a little over a year since I started, and when Greg asked me to come in and kind of give you guys an update on where the library is and what it's doing and all of that, I was excited because we've done a lot over the last year or so. We've gotten busier, we've gotten more programs going, we've focused things. It's become the library that the community values. Not that it wasn't before, but it shows now. Our foot traffic is up. It was up by 2,000 people in March 2019 over March 2018. In times when circulation across the country, books and items that are checked out from libraries around the country are dropping. Our circulation is increasing. Now, it was flat in February, but February's weather stunk. But our circulation went up in March by 2,000. Our programs for teens, we've done more for teens, and teens are coming in and using the library. We've seen a 200% increase in teen volunteers since this time last year. We've seen an increase in adult volunteer hours over this time last year. We have seen an increase in the number of tech appointments that are made. And let me give you a little bit of idea of what the tech appointments are. Your devices. We all have devices. And you know, like, maybe a quarter of what to do with them and how to use them. You have problems, you have a question, you make an appointment with the library, we sit down with you one-on-one for an hour and help you use your device, help you answer those questions that you have. Now, we can't fix them. If you've got a broken screen or something like that, we can't do that. But we will help you understand your device, everything from your Kindles to your iPads to your Android phones to a laptop. We will help you use it. If you carry your desktop in, we will help you learn how to use your desktop. So all of those are up as well. Interestingly, over the last couple months, we've seen a decrease in Wi-Fi users, and I think that is due to the fact that unlimited data plans are increasing and are becoming less expensive for people. So they don't walk into the library and they automatically connect to our Wi-Fi. That doesn't mean that they're down by hundreds; they're down by tens. But it's something that I'm keeping an eye on. one of the things that I've implemented, the state library requires that we, once a year, count questions that we answer. We take a week, we answer questions, we put them in little, hash marks. Is it a directional? Is it a reference? Is it something like that? That's not a fair representation of what we're actually doing with the people that walk into the library. We are answering questions on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, sometimes on a minute-by-minute basis. So to look at our circulation numbers and to look at our foot traffic doesn't fairly represent what we're doing. So about this time last year, I implemented a program called Desk Tracker, which allows us not only to capture the interaction and the number of interactions and the time that those interactions take, but the stories that come with them as well. And that's what the library is truly about, is how do we affect and how do we enhance the lives of the Warminster community. And we are doing that. And two of the best stories that I have are, the first one, a gentleman was laid off from his job, and I don't remember exactly what his job was, but he didn't want to stay at home. He didn't want to be at home. He felt useless when he was at home. So he came to the library every day while he was unemployed, used our computers, read our materials, watched DVDs on our computers and on his laptop, and looked for jobs. I mean, you can't look for jobs like every 24 seconds, but he came in and he used our resources not only to look for work, but also to keep his brain active while he was doing this. After about 3 months of doing this and using the library's resources, that man got a job and came in and was so excited that the library was able to help him do that. The other story I have is a woman who was laid off. She's in her 60s and she's an RN, and she's been an RN for 30 plus years. She was laid off and she didn't know what to do. She didn't have a technology background. She didn't know what it was or what she needed to. She didn't know what she needed to know. And she worked with us through those tech sessions and on our computers and self-taught. And we have a database called lynda.com, which is free with your library card. We have a number of resources that are free with your library card that can help you learn things. And this woman came in every day or a couple times a week and used Lynda and used our resources and used those tech appointments and helped herself learn, and we helped her learn. And she wound up with a job at the Masonic Lodge as an RN that she's now going to continue for the next however long she chooses to stay there. The third story is not quite as life-changing, but is much more life-affirming, or is as life-affirming. We do a lot of give-backs with the community and with partners that we have. We've done prom dress drive, which, thank you everyone, we have over 250 prom dresses donated to the library. That shows me that the community recognizes the value of the library. We do food drives in the fall. We were a drop-off location for Toys for Tots. The one that we're doing right now is making guinea pig beds. Believe it or not, there is a National Guinea Pig Rescue Association, and we have come into the library, and you can make guinea pig beds that we are giving to the association. That type of program and that type of thing that we offer brings people in who are across the spectrum, and a lot of children who are diagnosed with autism and Asperger's and that type of thing. And we had a kid, and actually came up to Heather and said this, that the guinea pig bed was one of the best things that he has ever done, and he wrote us a note to give to the guinea pigs when we gave him we gave the bed in. So again, not quite as life-changing as getting a job, but it was the best thing that this kid ever did. That's what the library does. We give to the community, and I am so humbled every day and so proud every day to come into the library and work for this community, because it does value its library. Given that, we've got a bunch of stuff happening coming up. We've got a parent academy on speech, language, and literacy development. I have to put my eyes on for this one. On Wednesday, April 24th at 6 p.m. Talked about organizing and tidying and downsizing. Everybody's heard of the Spark Joy person, the KonMari method. We have a trained KonMari person coming in on Tuesday, April 30th at 6 p.m. All of these programs are free. We've got an American Music, American Revolution to the 1920s on May 1st at 6 p.m. We've been doing hands-on history programs for kids, ages 3rd grade to 6th grade. We did an illuminated manuscript where they got to create their own illuminated manuscript. That was very well done. We had pirates come in from the Seaport Museum, and the one that's coming up is learn about the Roman Colosseum, and that's going to be on May 8th at 4:30. Couple other things that we have coming up. We have a hearing program where you can come in and get your hearing tested for free, and that is the 14th, May 14th at 6 p.m. But the biggest thing that we have coming up, and the thing that we're working on very, very hard right now, is our summer reading program. Summer reading kicks off on June 20th at 6:30. It is a Thursday night, and the theme for this year's summer reading is space. It's a universe of stories, but it's essentially space. It is the 20th anniversary of the moon landing. It is the 250th anniversary of Starry Night. 130th, sorry about that. 130th anniversary of Starry Night. So there's a lot of space things going on. On the kickoff on the 20th, we are going to have a inflatable planetarium where you can come in to the library and into a planetarium and get that Franklin Institute feel. We have Science in the Summer coming up. We have NASA is doing live streams, and we are a partner with that to get live streams of NASA, both ISS and other things that are going on with that. We are in desperate attempt to get a Skype with a astronaut or a NASA worker, so fingers crossed on that one that one happens. Lots of other things. The summer reading program is not just programs, though. It has been dynamically demonstrated over and over again that when you read, and when you read as a family, and when you read over the summer to your children and with your children, the summer slump does not happen. The summer slump is reduced, and children stay on reading level instead of coming back in September and having to catch up again. And that actually is not just across reading, it is across mathematics and sciences as well. And that's what summer reading is all about. The programs bring people, the programs entertain people and educate people, but it stops that summer slump and it brings families together to read. That's what the library does. So thank you guys for everything that you do for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or feedback for Ms. Reed?
Thank you to you and your staff for a job well done.
And they make me look good. It's the staff. It is what they choose to do, and that inspires me every day. So thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that.
I'm going to let them talk.
So.
Anything else?
2018, you had over 130,000 visitors
Yes.
to the library?
Yes.
Are
That
you-
was up over 15,000 from the year before.
So you're projected to go even
Yes.
higher? Okay.
I hope so.
And it's 213 adult programs. Does that include seniors as well? Or
That is once you, yes, that is seniors.
Okay.
But we have, our adult programs are open to everyone, just like the hearing program, while it is targeted to seniors. I have a mother and her 19-year-old child that she is afraid has some devastating hearing loss, signed up for the program. So while we gear them to certain demographics and certain age groups, they're open to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it looks like you also have a very active Friends of Warminster Library.
Yes, we couldn't do summer reading without the Friends of the Library, and I am remiss for not mentioning them when talking about summer reading. They are the primary sponsor of summer reading program this year. They are funding all of our programs, all of our events, and some of our resources that we give away. Because each time you read and when you read for minutes with a child and when an adult reads for pleasure or for whatever, you are entered into baskets and raffles. So the Friends are sponsoring some of those as well. So
Very
yeah,
good.
they are wonderful.
You're doing a great job. I appreciate it.
So
So, Ms. Reed, I understand that this past week was National Library Week. Is that correct?
yes, it was.
And we have a proclamation. Would you do the honor of reading it?
Sure.
Can I ask a question of the Township Manager before we go? I see they're just getting underway over at the Doucher's Farm project, and I know we're getting lot fees, and I know we had discussed taking some of that lot fee and putting it over to the library.
Yes, the developer agreed to do and has submitted the paperwork so that we have a 50-50 split between the library and the park and rec
Excellent.
department.
That's great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
As I see Ms.
for that as well.
Shadrew's here, and I knew she would hold our feet to the fire on that one, so.
National Library Week is a week every year. It's the second week in April. It ran from April 8th through April 13th last week, and that it is a national recognition. So the fact that the Township of Warminster has this proclamation just, again, reinforces my belief that the library is valued by the community, and the library values its community. So given that, Township of Warminster proclamation, whereas, oh, I got to put it up here. There it is. Whereas the Warminster Township Board of Supervisors supports National Library Week, which occurs the second week of April every year, and whereas libraries are more than book repositories, demonstrating the breadth and the depth of all they offer to their communities, with the opportunities for community engagement, learning, and growth while delivering new services which more closely connect to residents and their needs. And whereas libraries throughout Pennsylvania have consistently served as valued and needed institutions, and library staffs and volunteers strengthen these centers by fueling their efforts to enhance the surrounding community. And whereas librarians level the playing field for anyone who seeks information and access to technologies, particularly as society continues to transition the way in which information is shared and explored in the online world. Now, therefore, be it resolved that by the Warminster Township Board of Supervisors proclaims National Library Week to be the second week of April in Warminster Township, residents are encouraged to visit their local libraries this week and beyond. Please come back. Exploring all the libraries have to offer and realizing that literacy is power and that libraries provide the fuel to move Pennsylvania forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And we actually have a nice proclamation to give you, not just a white sheet of paper, so we'll make sure to get that to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Appreciate it.
Good job, Tracy.
All right. Moving on from books to roads. Next up on our agenda, 2019 road program. I'd like to call on Mr. Eric Hines. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me. Just a general overview of the road program this year on the slides. We're going to be working, resurfacing roads in Sector 6. That's in the southeast corner of the township. Davisville Street corner. Okay. Those are roads we're doing. I don't know if you're familiar with the section, the Sweetbriar neighborhood. Yeah. And then there's the section as a neighborhood, Lower Road off of Street Road. That whole neighborhood will get resurfaced as well. Kind of hard to see, but that's where it is. Why don't you back up one? I just want to point something out. Also, one of the alternates on this contract is that really horrible section of Henry Avenue, that little piece that comes in off the county line, up to that first side street. We've got to get that taken care of. So that's on the contract as well. Okay, thanks. 13 roads to be done. 3.19 miles, 5,300 tons, probably a little bit more than that. And the majority of those roads haven't been resurfaced for that long, 35 years. It's a really long time. Low number of ADA ramps this year. That'll be in the Lowell Road neighborhood.
And Eric, if I could just ask a quick question, the curb ramps, I mean, it's only 18, but what's the total cost, approximate cost of those 18 ramps?
18 times $4,500 a piece.
Okay. So you're coming close to 100,000.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point that out because it's a significant, this is an unfunded mandate, which we have to go ahead and put these curb ramps in, and it does dip into our liquid fuels allocation. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of those costs.
Well, that's where I was going to explain to the folks how we go about paying for the road program is done through our liquid fuels allocations by the state of Pennsylvania.
State funds, yep.
So that's what dictates how many miles of road we can pave by how much money we get in
That's
liquid
correct.
fuels. And we do dip into that some for road maintenance over the winter.
We do, almost everything comes out of that from
Is that-
road maintenance. That's salt, that's, you know, our trucks come out of the liquid fuels funding.
Right, 'cause a couple of years ago, we had snowstorm after snowstorm on the weekend, used all types of overtime and salt, because there was a lot of ice, and it ate into how many miles of road. I think we only paved a mile that year, because.
Wow.
we ate
Yeah,
a
and then we
lot.
also have to pay for the cost of the subs that help us do the snow removal too.
Right.
That's also liquid fuels qualifying. Yeah, it does take a big chunk. Next year's program, we're looking at doing Sector 5, which is in this neighborhood around the Township building. That particular section of roads that I have on schedule has about 58 handicap ramps, right, Greg? So I mean, you could approach $300,000 just for handicap ramps.
An unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, next, please. There's the curb ramp locations. I just wanted to touch base on how the road program is, it's effective, the way things are going right now. We're still sticking to working in sectors every year, not jumping all over the township. This is a look at last year's road program. Before 2018, there was 46% of the roads that were rated really, really poorly. And then after we got done, you're up to 80% of the roads are good quality now. So that's what's happening every year in every sector we go to. Those percentages are jumping up that much.
It's very noticeable, Eric.
Oh,
I
good.
drive around the township, it's a big improvement.
There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still potholes.
Right.
We're working on it. You know, we do what we can with the funding we have. That's pretty much the schedule for the next up until 2023. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from Hines?
So the roads you pave, how long typically should they last before they need to be repaired?
So that's going to vary on the type of road, where the road's located, with the traffic. You know, if it's one of our township mains, you know, one of the big ones, the Delmonts, the new towns, you know, if they get resurfaced correctly with the amount of traffic that's on those roads, it should be a 15-year last. In the neighborhood streets, you're talking 20 plus.
And the roads that are going to be paved in 2020, when was the last time they were paved? It's, again, like another 35 years, or?
Oh, yeah, they're back there. I don't know if it's quite that long, but, I mean, Parry Road's right up the street. There's quite a few that have been, what it looks like has been done, they haven't been repaved, they've been oiled and chipped and temporary, you know, sealing type things, which I'm just not a firm believer in, so.
The township didn't always do the overlay, mill and overlay, so, and a lot of more rural townships do the oil and chip, and they just don't last as long. So, you know, I think the road program for years now has been running smooth. Eric's done a phenomenal job. We've really reduced soft costs as well. I mean, for a while there, everything was leaning on our engineering services with Eric now and the township staff. I know Greg was a big part of it as well. It was just trying to reduce costs because those handicap ramps are expensive. So next year, and there's liability. I mean, we're at risk to get sued, so we have to design them. But some of the roads were oil and chipped several times, and if they would have overlaid, milled and overlaid, and done it right like we're doing now, I think obviously they'd last a lot longer.
And after all the sectors are hit once, that's 6 years, 6 sectors, we start all over again, you know, back at the first sector and go through. And the road program is, it's an evolving document. The roads are being, you know, looked at again every single year to be reevaluated for condition. So if conditions change, you know, sector that year could change.
It does have, if we have a rough winter, that affects the roads
Absolutely.
too, with the treatments that you use, correct?
Absolutely.
I just want to thank you and your staff for doing a great job, because it is very noticeable, and we
Thank
do
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
So Eric, what does your schedule look like then? When do you think you'll be?
We're going
In
to
that
start
neighborhood.
milling in the Sweetbriar neighborhood on May 6th.
All right.
Yeah.
So you hope to be wrapped up by June, July again this year then?
Yeah, it should be, with that amount of roads, it should be a 5-6 week program.
And then typically you spend the rest of the summer doing maintenance? Road
Yeah.
road repair?
Yeah.
And some supplemental work?
Yep.
Because like the folks at home and the people here, if there's a road that's in need of repair in your neighborhood, please call us, because we're not there, we don't know.
Absolutely. People
For our-
call,
put it
it's
on this
great.
list.
That's all I need to know. Just let me know where the problem is. I'll come out.
Excellent, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, item D for presentations. We're going to receive now a presentation on assessments from Mr. Schuster. Mr. Schuster?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to give this presentation this evening because during the course of the year, we're going to have to start talking about long-term financial solutions. And one of the things that inevitably comes up is the mill rate and how it can or can't be adjusted over the long run. And what I wanted to make sure that everyone has an understanding, both this board and the public, is the impact that the assessments have on our taxes that we take in. So let me just start off by talking about what's in the second-class township code. For the general fund, which we talk about the most, there is a cap of 14 mills on there, which on the rough estimate side is about $4.5 million for the assessment we have in the township. That's how much, if we were to go to 14 mills, how much money would come in for taxes. As you also know, we can petition the court to go up to 19 mills, which would bring in approximately $6.1 million. Same story with the ambulance fund. There's a 0.5 mil cap there and a 3 mil cap on the fire fund. There's also additional restrictions on that fire fund about how much that money can be spent in certain categories, such as salary. So when we have a conversation in the future about bringing in paid fire services, just because we can increase the 3 mills, we wouldn't necessarily be able to use all that money for those things. So a couple things to keep in mind there. Where we're at right now, next slide please. General fund 11.09 mils, ambulance is 0.13, fire 1.25, and the others have no cap on them. So you can see that in most of the funds, with the exception of the general fund, we do have room to go ahead and adjust that and take on either additional debt or fund park and recreation services or library services. Fire fund, I just mentioned how the cap could come into play, but really the concern, as you know, is with the general fund. So now I'm going to talk about something called the common level ratio. And at a simplest term, common level ratio is just the ratio between the market value of your home and what it's assessed at. So if your home happened to be $250,000 on the market and it was assessed at $125,000, that's half the value. That would be a common level ratio of 50%. The state determines this annually by looking at the sales that occur in a municipality versus what the assessment is. And by the way, all the assessments are done by the county. We have no say in that. We're not involved in that process. So using the example of a $250,000 home, which is pretty close to the average home value in Warminster Township, to go ahead and figure out what taxes are derived from, what municipal taxes are derived from that, you would take the common level ratio, which in our case is 10.4%, multiply that by the home market value, and you'd come up with $26,000. We charge 17.07 mils total amongst all our funds, so if you multiply that out, you would come up with the average taxpayer, close to average taxpayer, paying $443 to the municipality. And everyone out there that's saying my tax bill is way higher than that, I'm just talking about the municipal bill. I'm not talking about the county bill. I'm not talking about the school bill. This is just the township portion of the bill. So this is the area where it becomes problematic in what that common level ratio is. 10.4% is the lowest in Pennsylvania. What that essentially means is we're only taxing 10% of the value of every single property. Now, normally, the cap on the mill rate is not a factor, but because our county assessment is so low, it becomes a factor. So comparing counties is an apples to oranges comparison because they can change the assessment value there through the reassessment process. And you can see, again, where we fall, and we highlighted some of our neighboring counties, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, they're all around the 50 to 60% range. So what does this mean? So we have a 10.4% common level ratio in Bucks County with a mill rate of 17.07. If we moved a few hundred yards over over there in Montgomery County, our common level ratio would be 50.9%, and the mill rate would be 3.49 mils. Now, with this, there'd be absolutely no change in what everyone's actually paying. There'd be no change in the tax you're paying. But it affects the calculation, and as you can see, with a mill rate cap of 14 mils, that's not even in play. So I want to give that sense of how these assessments are, these low assessments, are really having an impact not only now, but in the future. If you look at where we would be in Montgomery County with a 3.49 mill rate, we're right in the middle. We'd be pretty average. So, the quick presentation. I just want to make sure that everyone had a basic understanding on the interplay between the assessed value and the mill rate. What's the remedy? It's really up to the county. We can certainly have a discussion with other Bucks County municipalities that are having issues with the cap. I know there are a couple boroughs that have sought relief from the court and gotten a higher mill rate. I know that there are a couple other townships that have not as of yet requested relief, but are approaching the level where they're going to hit that cap. So it's starting to become a problem for some municipalities. And additionally, we should open a dialogue at some point with the county on how we go ahead and address this. But bottom line, I just want to talk, bring this forward, because when we talk about taxes and taxing our way out of the financial situation we're in, we are really limited by that mill rate cap. Not so much the cap, but more the assessment that goes behind it.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Schuster?
Well, I think that part of whatever our long-term solutions are going to be here, we need to have that conversation with the county sooner rather than later. I mean, we're approaching the cap without going to court. Even if we were to go to the cap, not going to fix our problems here.
But, and correct, if you recall, the budget that I presented had a mill rate that was 18 and change, so you were pretty much right at the cap, even with court approval. Now, you didn't adopt that.
Just to tread water.
Just to tread water. So even with that, there's a future concern that we would not be able to increase taxes anymore. And again, it's really not a problem with the cap. It's a problem with the assessments and the fact that we're only taxing, or only have the ability to tax 10.4% of the value of every single property. If you were to just double that and say it was 20%, our mill rate would be cut in half.
Right.
And so we really don't need that big of a change, but because it's so low, it is having a huge impact on our ability.
And not to anything we would have to do would sway the county's opinion on this, but I think we should have the conversation anyway.
When was the last time there was an assessment from the county?
I believe 70s or something.
74, I believe.
It's been a long time.
74, Bobby? Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just to wrap my brain around it. So even if we were at 3.5 millage, like Montgomery County.
Yeah.
Each mill then would become significantly more effective, right? With
Oh, yes,
respect to-
yes.
So like a 2 mil tax raise.
Would be
in
huge.
Montgomery County would be huge.
Yes.
And whereas here, you could do a 5 or 8 or a 9 mil tax rate, and it's not, that's why it doesn't solve anything.
Exactly. In other townships and counties with higher common level ratios, you see them fighting over a 0.1 or 0.2 mil increase, because it has a big impact on the taxes. Here, it really is not going to impact a 0.1 mil increase to the average taxpayer probably means a couple bucks a year. So it varies greatly, yes.
Yeah, I think before year's end that we should formally, as a board, petition the county for some assistance with this.
Well, the first thing I'd like to do, if the board doesn't have any objection, at least open a dialogue and start talking with them about and that's why I'd like to talk to other municipalities that may be having a similar issue and say this is a growing problem and it needs to be addressed.
Are other township officials in the county, Bucks and Montgomery, are they on board with doing this too? Have you spoken to any of them?
Well, I haven't spoken to anyone, but Montgomery County, they wouldn't be concerned with it at all because their common level ratio is around 50%, so their cap doesn't even come into play. But I imagine if I talk to some of the borough managers that have run across this cap, and some other township managers, yeah, I'd imagine there'd be some concern.
This would be a big relief for us too, even if they said if they doubled it, it would be a huge relief, correct?
It would give the ability to go ahead and levy additional taxes, where right now we don't have that ability.
Thank you.
I would, yeah, I see. Typically on a presentation, I wouldn't go public comment, but because of the nature of this particular one, I will. Mrs. Lynch, did you have your hand up? I did. Yes.
Jane Lynch, Gorson Drive. I know you have to do something because you're going to go bankrupt, but reassessing long-time residents who live in this township could be disastrous. In Montgomery County, when a house is sold, they reassess. Bucks County is different. Are you talking about reassessing my home that I lived here 57 years? Do you know what that would do to this community? Everybody in this room, aside from Bobby Loftus, who has new construction, rates would go up. If you come into this community and you buy an older house, the taxes remain the same. If you buy new construction, of course the taxes are different. But as you have your financial problems, you will bear this burden onto every senior and every family who has bought older homes. This isn't the way out. Find the way out. That's your job. I've paid my taxes for 57 years. And now you're bankrupt? That's not my problem. I'm sorry. That's your problem. Whether you talk about this is one thing. Whether you do it is another. Everyone on this board, reassessment, their taxes would go up. And like I said before, seniors, it would be disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lynch.
Thank you.
To Mrs. Lynch's point, we're talking about what other municipalities are doing. I happen to currently be the president of the Bucks County Association of Township Officials, and I can tell you, this is never talked about. Mrs. Lynch is absolutely right.
Was there any other public comment or question? Mr. Drew? I actually said your last name correct. I'm proud of myself. 6 years.
I'm just wondering, if you go to Bucks County, you're going to ask the county to open up assessments, or that would be the discussion to start. Is that across the county, or could they just come into Warminster and do that? Or
So my understanding, it would have to be across the county.
good luck with that.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's not going to happen, but at least we could say, take that off the table. That takes us down to
I'm
only
just
a
trying
couple
to
of options left.
I'm just trying to bring awareness to what the limitation is that we face. So whenever it says, well, to fix it, increase taxes, my point is, because of the low assessments, there's no point where we can't
Tax anymore.
We can't tax our way out of this. That's
Right.
not the solution.
Right.
You know, so either the assessments has to change, or we have to find a different solution.
All right. I think we got it. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Schuster. Appreciate it. All right. We're on to land use matters, public hearings and ordinances. First up is the authorization to advertise the motor vehicle code ordinance amendments. I'm going to throw that to Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been working on this internally for about a year and a half. We're trying to look at all of the chapters in our ordinances and pick them off one by one, because a lot of them just haven't been reviewed over time, and just generally do a lot of cleanup. So this is what this chapter is. We're just the majority of it is cleanup. So I will summarize the changes. I did send out a red line version as well. You're more than welcome to go ahead and advertise it for adoption this evening. If you'd like to take another month and look over it and advertise it next month, that's fine. There's no time pressure on this at all. But a quick summary of the changes. There were some global changes. There were a few sections in there where the Board of Supervisors was the authority that closed roads. Proposed changing that to the township manager because you only meet once a month, and it'd be problematic to try and get the board together in the case of emergency. Also, there is, in a lot of these sections, penalties that reference state statute, or what the actual amounts were. We removed that because we've just followed state statute on what the penalties were. We didn't want to have it stated in our ordinances and also have it elsewhere in the statutes. The speed limit section, there was some cleanup, but no changes. And when I say cleanup, I'm talking about some roads that no longer exist were in there. Some roads that do exist were not in there. We were just cleaning all that up, so no changes to the speed limits. Same thing with the traffic signals, just codifying what's already in existence. Same thing with prohibited turns, and also with stop signs. There was a weight restriction on Newtown Road, which we cleaned that up because there's no engineering behind that. There's no real reason to have that on there. The section on through trucks, we had to remove that or recommend removing that due to the fact there's no engineering study to behind that to go ahead and force it. Also, if we did in fact prohibit through trucks, it would reduce our liquid fuels that come in every time you put those restrictions on there. On the prohibited parking section, we cleaned that up and just made sure all the roads in there were proper. Residential parking permit, as you're aware that there's some areas of the township that are parking by permit only, so only residents can go there. We added in the zones that are currently enforced, just some cleanup. There were some roads that we've been enforcing for a while that just were not in the code. And lastly, for declaring a snow emergency and other emergency restrictions, we recommend changing that to the township manager rather than the chairman of the board.
Any questions for Mr. Schuster?
Yeah, the section where the Board of Supervisors will no longer have the decision whether they close roads, it'll go to the township manager, and we're basing it off because we only meet once a month?
Yeah.
What if that changes? What if we start meeting twice, 3, 4 times a month?
You can leave it in there. It's,
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that. I think the board should make that decision.
so what the board wants to do is if we have to close a road in a week, have an emergency meeting of the board?
What's the emergency that,
Could be,
typically when do we close roads? Memorial Day? And
that's part of it, yes.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's also emergency. I'm fine either way.
Is that a public meeting required in order to be able to make that decision, or is that like a phone call with the 5 members? What's
The board, absent of a meeting, has no authority.
okay?
Mr. Iannozzi, do you have any?
If you're not comfortable giving that authority 100% to the township manager, you could list it as in the province of the Board of Supervisors, or it's registered, in fact, like a designee of some sort, which will give you that fluidity. And then also just some careful planning. If you know that there's only a couple times a year that you're closing these roads, then I think you handle it that way. But listing a registered designee would give you that fluidity, that you don't have to have the public meeting.
Do we have an example of this in the last year or two? Or we've had it shut down?
I can't think of one now.
Okay. So it's not something that happens frequently?
No.
Any other questions, concerns? So do we want to amend the language to reflect Mr. Iannozzi's suggestion about the required designee?
And you can further limit that to say that the designee would only be able to operate in emergent circumstances. All other situations you could do at the beginning of your year where you kind of identify those times that you want roads to be closed and keep an inventory on an annual basis.
I mean, things happen all the time with the chief and between you and I mean, I kind of feel like if with respect to an emergency situation, it would be more incumbent on the township manager in communication with the police chief. I don't know if the board needs to be addressed with that.
I agree. I think it should be for emergency case, it should be in the hands of the township manager and the police chief.
Because if it is an emergency and it needs to be done right away,
You
we
don't be
can't
hot.
meet right before that.
I don't want to come home from Wildwood to close the road.
So just to be clear, so that we keep the language as is then.
I think so.
I think so, too.
So you got 3 there, so. So now the question, Mr. Schuster, would be, is whether or not
To make
we
votes.
vote on to advertise tonight or not, correct?
Correct. There's no time pressure. If you want to take a little more time and review it, you're more than welcome to. If you want to advertise it and start the process, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Well,
We're going to advertise.
I'm
right.
okay with that, too.
does anybody want to make a motion to authorize the advertisement?
Motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, so now it's on the table. Any further questions or comments regarding the authorization to advertise? Any from the public? All right, seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Chair votes aye, it passes 4-1. All right. All right, moving on to item B. This is conditional use 2018-01, 780 Falcon Circle, also known as the Fuge continuance request. Mr. Iannozzi?
Yes, applicant's counsel has requested an indefinite continuance request of this application with the provision that it would give the township 30 days' notice prior to our re-advertising it. The basis for the continuance request is the notion that they're currently going forward with their land development. Once that process is affected, the need for the conditional use relief will be obviated. So it's a way of expediting and getting to the result quicker.
Excellent. Do we have to take any actions?
All I would do is put up a motion to grant the continuance as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any questions, comments from the board?
This is, I mean, is there people from the public is what I'm interested in.
Well, we're gonna get
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's, I'll wait.
Any questions, comments from the public on this continuance request? Okay, seeing none, back to us. Mr. Monroe, you good?
No, I'm fine.
All right. Let's call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Wonderful.
All right. We're going to move on to the conditional use for AT&T Mobility. I'm going to turn that over also to Mr. Iannozzi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll now move to the public meeting portion of our meeting this evening. Before we begin and open the record, I just want to kind of give a brief primer. There's 2 applications. One is conditional use 2019-1, that's 885 Old York Road. The proposal is to put a small cell tower on a pole in the right-of-way. We'll read the legal shortly. The next is conditional use 2019-02, 510 Easton Road. Same proposal, but at a different location. We're going to open the record, read the legal, mark some exhibits. Counsel's here with certain witnesses. He's promised to be brief. At his conclusion, the board will ask questions, and then we'll allow the public to ask questions as well. So with that being said, let's open the hearing for 19-1, the legal publication that was advertised on Thursday, March 7th, 2019, and Thursday, March 14th, 2019, reads as follows. New Singular Wireless PC LLC, DBA, AT&T Mobility requests conditional use approval under Part 16, Section 27, 1656 3A1C of the Township Zoning Ordinance as amended, related to wireless telecommunications, tower-based facilities in the rights-of-way. Applicant proposes to use the approximately 38-foot, 10-inch existing wooden utility pole owned by Pico Energy, located at 885 Old York Road's right-of-way in the Township's R-4 district as a small cell telecommunications facility by attaching a small coffee can-style antenna with ancillary radio equipment to it. The installation of the proposed antenna will extend the approximate height of the pole to 41 feet, 1 inch. The associated equipment will be housed with a concealing shroud at a height of 16 feet above ground so that no equipment will be placed on the ground within the right-of-way. So that is the publication that ran as noted. We'll now mark the following exhibits. B1 is the application and the addendum presented by Mr. Kuche on behalf of applicant. B2 is the proof of publication. B3 is the posting of the property, which was posted on April 11th, 2019. And B4 is the Township Zoning Review Letter dated April 8th, 2019. Those are the exhibits. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make themselves a party to this application in favor or against? Okay, seeing none, we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Kuche.
Thank you, Mr. Iannuzzi. Good evening, members of the board, staff. Nicholas Kuche here on behalf of the applicant, AT&T. Before I proceed into my presentation, I have pre-marked exhibit packets that I'd like to hand up at this time.
Certainly.
Thank you.
This is for both applications, or?
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
That's fine, that's fine.
And as you're dispersing those, we'll mark applicant's exhibit packet as A1 collectively. A1 consists of 11 subparts, and I'll read them quickly. A1 is the application. A2 is the pole attachment agreement with PECO, giving AT&T the authority to present this application and proceed accordingly. A3 is the structural analysis. A4 is the CV for Brock Rifle, or Riffle? Riffle, okay. A5 is the FCC license. A6 are the propagation plans that illustrate the existing and proposed coverage. A7 is the FCC compliance analysis. A8 is the site plan. A9 are the photographic simulations prepared by Jacobs Engineering showing the existing pole and what will be out in the field if you grant, if the board sees fit to grant you relief. A10 and 11 are reserved, and we'll move that into the record.
Thank you. This evening, I would be presenting the testimony of two witnesses, our site acquisition consultant, Samantha Berman, and our radio frequency engineer, Mr. Brock Riffle. If the solicitor and the board are amenable, I am prepared to summarize their testimony. They're here, can be sworn in. I'm prepared to summarize their testimony, have them adopt same, augment if necessary.
And the board will be able to ask questions.
And the board will be able to ask questions.
I'd recommend we proceed in that fashion.
Everybody on board?
Yes, thank
Please
you.
proceed.
Mr. Solicitor, would you like them both sworn in at the same time?
Certainly. Now, you can do that now, or you could do that after your presentation. That's up to you.
Now would be
Okay, certainly,
perfect.
yes. Let's have them both sworn in.
Tell me swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, so help me God.
Thank you.
So the subject wooden utility pole is owned by PECO Energy Company and is located at the address of 855 Old York Road. The pole is within the township right-of-way and is presently zoned R4 in the R4 district. The existing PECO pole is to be replaced with the new pole. We've actually submitted, since our initial submission, revised plans that change the heights a little bit, but are still well within the height restrictions and guidelines of the township, and I'll go over those in a few minutes. That being said, once the pole is replaced by PECO, an antenna would be placed at the top of the pole and equipment mounted on the side of the pole, along with a kill switch, and I will also get into that. AT&T has capacity issues in this particular area of the township, and we are seeking conditional use approval to help meet our objectives and alleviate the capacity issues. As noted, my first witness would be our site acquisition consultant, Ms. Samantha Berman. Samantha is a site acquisition consultant, and her responsibility is to locate viable candidates or properties within the search ring that is established by the radio frequency engineer to achieve AT&T's objectives. being mostly capacity at this time and in building coverage. She would testify that AT&T looks to co-locate on existing structures or infrastructure whenever possible. She would testify that there is a viable wooden pole in this area for AT&T's use. In this particular instance, the pole is within the right-of-way and owned by Pico Energy Company, as noted. She would testify that AT&T has the owner's authorization to proceed with this application, and I would direct the board's attention to Exhibit A2, which is a copy of the relevant pages of the pole attachment agreement with Pico. She would testify that the proposed facilities are permitted by conditional use, as they are within the right-of-way in this particular district. She would testify that the site will withstand wind gusts of at least 100 miles per hour, directing your attention to Exhibit A3, which is a copy of a structural analysis prepared by Jacobs Engineering, dated March 11th, 2019. Finally, she would testify that this particular facility would be unmanned and would require no signage or advertising of any kind. That would be the sum total of Ms. Berman's testimony. Ms. Berman, did you have an opportunity to listen to my summation of your testimony? I did. And would you augment or change any portion of that summation? I would not. And would you adopt it as your own? I would. Thank you. If the board has any questions now, or if you'd like to wait till the end, it's up to you.
Any questions at this point? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you. My second and final witness would be our radio frequency engineer, Mr. Brock Riffle. Brock would testify as to his credentials in the field of radio frequency engineering, noting that he has testified in numerous municipal proceedings for telecom facilities, directing the board's attention to A4, which is a copy of Mr. Riffle's CV. I would, at that point, or at this point, offer up Mr. Riffle as an expert in the field of radio frequency engineering. If Mr. Solicitor, the board has any questions on the qualifications of Mr. Riffle, he is here to answer at this time.
Just one clarification. Your structural engineer you mentioned is licensed Pennsylvania.
Yes.
I notice you keep saying you're an engineer, but his resume every day says radio frequency design expert. That's two different things. He has a Bachelor of Science degree, but nowhere does he say he's a professional engineer.
Mr. Riffle is not.
That's correct. So I'm not. Microphone, please.
You got to turn that on, please, first. Thank you.
You have to have an engineering degree to turn that one on. It's tricky. There's like two buttons usually.
And just why he's figuring out, I'm not questioning your vast experience, considering how many applications you've worked on.
So Mr. Riffle is our radio frequency engineer. He is not a professional engineer. He is not a civil engineer. He's not here to provide that testimony. He is here to provide testimony as to the technical aspects and the need for this particular site, and to generally go over the plan that was prepared.
Right.
But he is.
I just want to clarify, you used the terminology engineer, so. If you're
Radio
correct.
frequency engineer.
So to Mr. Kenner's point.
You can't say engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania without being licensed.
He's your radio frequency expert.
That's fine.
That's what you
okay.
do. Okay.
I don't want to get hung.
I've been
that's
through these before, so I just want to clarify.
Absolutely fine.
That's fine.
Sure.
Thank you.
So our radio frequency expert, Mr. Brock Riffle. So I don't know if the board has any questions of Mr. Riffle and his qualifications.
Proceed.
Mr. Riffle would testify that AT&T is licensed by the FCC, directing the board's attention to Exhibit A5, which are copies of the relevant FCC licenses for this particular area. And under its license, AT&T is required to provide what is known as reliable coverage. Reliable coverage simply is when a user is able to initiate and maintain a call without experiencing drop calls, busy signals, or going directly to voicemail, as we've probably all experienced at one time or another. Also, reliable coverage now includes data put-through speeds and should be within appropriate industry levels. He would testify that this site is required due to exponential growth in data usage and the advent of data-intensive applications. He would testify that these particular nodes, this node, are surgically placed to assist with capacity issues and improve in-building coverage in the community. He would note that the proposed antennas are to be mounted at the minimum height required to function satisfactorily and therefore achieve AT&T's objectives this evening. He would testify that propagation plans, as to the propagation plans he created illustrating the current and proposed coverage from this particular site, directing the board's attention to Exhibit A6, which are copies of the propagation plans. He would testify that that the facility will comply with power levels for maximum permissible human exposure, directing the board's attention to Exhibit A7, which is an FCC compliance analysis, which demonstrates that the levels that will be propagated from this particular site are well within the acceptable FCC standards. Also, Brock would testify that the facility will not cause radio frequency interference with other communications facilities in the township, again directing your attention to Exhibit A7, which also houses that information. He would testify that the facility will not cause interference with electronic devices such as home televisions, computers, radios, to the extent people still use radios. He would note that there is no lighting or markings that would be required by the FAA due to the limited height of this particular proposal. He would note that the site would be unmanned but monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week remotely. So if there were any issues with this site, the site went down for any particular reason, AT&T would know about it immediately and would be able to rectify the situation. He would testify that the plans prepared accurately depict what is being proposed, directing the board's attention to Exhibit A8, which is a copy of the site plan. He would note that AT&T is proposing a wireless facility on a Pico wooden pole replacement within the right-of-way. The current pole is 38 feet 10 inches in height. The proposed pole replacement, as revised, will be 43 feet 3 inches in height. The antenna affixed to the top of the pole would have a top height of 46 feet 10 inches, which is below the 50-foot threshold of the township per requirement. And that equipment would be placed on the side of the pole itself with a center line height of 14 feet 8 inches. Both the antenna and the equipment on the side would be painted to match the wooden pole, roughly a brown or beige color. He would note that there would also be an antenna power disconnect or kill switch affixed to the side of the pole at a center line height of 12 feet 2 inches. So should the site need to go off air, that could be done immediately. He would note that there is nothing proposed by way of equipment or the like on the ground. No fencing is proposed or necessary due to the heights here. Access for this site would be from the adjacent street. He would testify that the facility will be designed in accordance with all applicable safety and industry standards and will comply with all appropriate building codes. He would note that the facility will comply with all applicable FCC, FAA, federal, state, and local regulations. He would note that the site is unmanned and would require maintenance visits possibly every 4 to 6 weeks by a technician in an SUV-type vehicle. As noted, that vehicle would park essentially on the road next to the facility for any quick maintenance or check. He would testify that the proposal requires no lighting, no signage, no water, and no sewer. He would testify that vehicular access to this site would not interfere with parking or vehicular circulation on or around the site or existing streets. He would note that a photo simulation, as your solicitor mentioned, was prepared for this particular site, directing the board's attention to Exhibit A9. This shows the existing pole and the proposed pole replacement with the antenna and the side equipment attached thereto. He would note that the proposed use is in accordance with your comprehensive plan and consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance. He would note that the proposed use would not negatively impact the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. The proposed use would not impact municipal services negatively. He would testify that the proposed use does not affect the character of the neighborhood in any detrimental way. He would note that there would be a substantial improvement to the property in the immediate vicinity, again, noting that this would increase capacity and in-building coverage for those properties. He would testify that the proposed communications facility, if approved, is a suitable use for this particular property, being the right-of-way and existing infrastructure. And finally, per your ordinance, he would testify that the proposed use will serve the best interests of the township, the convenience of the community, and public welfare by making wireless telecommunications services available and more robust, including to the residents of the community. That would be the sum total of Mr. Riffle's testimony. Mr. Riffle, did you listen to my summation of your testimony?
I did.
And would you change any portion of that summation?
No.
And would you adopt it as your own?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Board has any questions for Mr. Riffle?
Any questions?
I'm not sure if it's applicable to you, but my question would have to do, we've had some people obviously have come in here with concerns about medical
Of course.
Exposure. So my question would be, are there any comparable case studies on human exposures with respect to this high frequency, specifically to human health?
So it's actually the same frequency bands that AT&T operates with their macro network. And AT&T did have a third party analyze the maximum permissible exposure from those frequencies at max power, worst case. And I believe the report is in here, right, Nick?
It sure is. It is.
So this study is to prove that the AT&T will be in compliance with the FCC standards when this site is put into operation. And at all levels of, let me just read it verbatim, using upper limit assumptions for the AT&T equipment configuration, the cumulative radio frequency exposure levels would be less than 0.45% of the applicable FCC standard at all locations of ground level public access. So what that means is you would have to effectively have 200 or more of these exact same sites in the exact same location just to approach the FCC's limits. So we're obviously well within that range.
Well, I mean, my question has to do with the FCC standard. I mean, where did the FCC get this standard? I mean, we live in Warminster Township, so we know a thing or two with respect to federal agencies polluting certain areas and having a negative impact on health effects. So my question is really about the FCC. So I don't know if you have any insight with respect to case studies that they did where what they've used on human exposure to set that limit.
So the limits were set back in 1996 when they did the Telecom Act, but they routinely and annually analyze it with any new case studies that come in. In fact, one of the professors down at Penn is a big scientist that's included in all of these FCC studies annually, and they update their calculations if they need to be.
Okay, so we don't know of any specific case studies?
I can't cite any case studies, no.
Okay, so the answer to my question is no, we don't know of any specific case studies that we can point to.
I do not have any case studies for you.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Do you always use Pico poles?
No, we do not. In fact, the next application that you will hear from me is actually on a Verizon pole, Verizon landline pole with utilities hooked up. But again, for these particular small cells, we typically try to use wooden utility poles, light standards, street lights, traffic lights, things of that nature.
Okay. And you don't put anything, you wouldn't be putting anything on top of that coffee can either, down
No.
the road, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is Mr. Iannosi, is our township protected in that aspect, that nothing can be put on top of those?
Well, if the board sees fit to grant the conditional use this evening, counsel and his client are prepared to accept a condition that this will be the only cell that would be put on that pole, correct?
Yep.
Not only are we prepared to accept that, that's our preference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There it is.
And I'd also like to thank Mr. Iannozzi, too, for his assistance with explaining that the antenna, what it looks like, and sending the pictures to the board, so we were prepared. I didn't realize it was the size of a coffee can, and hopefully, there won't be any case studies down in the future, because it seems to be the trend now where these antennas will be put everywhere because of the usage with the cell phones. Is that correct?
It's, ultimately, yeah.
Right, so,
And I'm sorry, just to clarify, you said the size of a coffee can. I just want to say, I don't believe it. I think it's the shape of a coffee can, but it's actually.
Right, we were just talking about that. In fact, so it's cylindrical, but it's roughly just 2 feet in height.
right, yeah,
Yeah, that's it, but
That's what she means,
roughly.
coffee can size. And possibly, if you want for the public's own edification, if you would like to share a pictorial with them so they could see it as well.
Absolutely.
Make sure everybody's as informed as possible. With that being said, can you just articulate for the board, what was the basis for the reduction in the height of the shrouded equipment piece? Did you say that it's down to I thought I heard you say that it's down from 16 to 14?
Well, I believe we increased, I believe the pole replacement, Mr. Iannozzi, is actually higher. So the antennas will be a bit higher.
Higher.
But I believe that
The concealed shroud will be at what height above ground?
the concealed shroud, it will have a center line height of 14 feet, 8 inches.
We had it advertised as 16 feet, so there's a slight reduction there.
There's a slight reduction, just merely design and working with Pico.
Okay.
We have some flexibility with regard to that. If you prefer it be at 16 feet, I can request that.
Well, I don't want to compromise, I mean, that's up to the board. I just wanted to understand the differential. But you're still compliant within
Correct.
the height limitations of the township, but if that's the board's preference, you'll hear from them on that.
so if they are eventually in the neighborhoods themselves, you're saying at this point, neighbors need not fear, because it's not going to be an ugly site like a big satellite. It's just going to be a 2-foot.
For this
Side.
type of equipment, yes, and it would be limited to, genuine needs and coverage, which Mr. Kuche spoke to this evening. It can't just be, unfettered, we're just going to place them wherever to gain certain competitive ground. It has to address a legitimate, genuine coverage need.
Thank you, and thank you for your explanations, too.
You're very
Just
welcome.
want to, let the public know, because we have received a lot of phone calls.
Of course.
People are afraid of the unknown, so.
I can completely understand, and we want to be good neighbors. We're coming into your community. We held a meeting last week, an open forum type meeting for any of the residents. They were noticed that would like to come in, just to have an open discussion, let them know, let them see what these looked like, and note health effects or lack thereof, obviously. So we're coming into your community, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments from the board for the applicants?
Okay, seeing none, is there anybody in the public that would like to ask a question of either of the two witnesses? Okay, seeing none.
George
Excuse
Lewis.
me, I didn't see George. Okay.
One question.
Please step forward, identify yourself for the record, sir.
George Lewis,
Address, please, sir.
724 Sherrill.
Thank you.
I only have one question. This contract is forever? You ever consider making it 5 years or something? You don't know about anything about this product. Does it have to be forever? That's all. Any time limit on this pole?
Do you want to explain about conditional use going with the property?
You gotta go. You can come up to the microphone. They can't hear you at home.
I'm sorry. I believe the terms are 20 or 25 years. It's based on our agreement with PICO. I'd be happy to provide an exact number. I'd have to follow up with that. It's not forever. There is a finite term.
And there's a requirement, I believe the contract also includes certain renewals.
Yes, I think at its longest point, it's 20 or 25
And
years.
that when that contract is up, the obligation is on the tenant, AT&T, to remove the structure and to leave the structure as they found it, as we sit today.
Right.
Okay.
Do you happen to have a picture of what it looks like so we can show the public that's watching at home?
Packet.
You wanna hand that?
Exhibit 9.
If you look in
Right,
this.
we do, but the folks,
Oh,
for the
yeah,
folks
they
at home.
looked at it,
So,
yeah. Oh,
what, hold it up?
I don't know, can you?
Whatever they tell you to do, the IT people, because I'm not sure.
I don't know. If you hold it, let's see if you can get it. We'll test how good he is.
He's working.
There he goes. So, I mean, the level of detail, I mean, basically.
Yeah.
Looks like a cross.
Yeah, well, I
Perfect
mean,
for Easter. Perfect for Easter.
Yeah, there you go.
when I looked at it, honestly, it was like one of those kids' puzzles. You said, what's different in this picture? And, and what largely is the difference from my vantage point, and feel free to disagree with me, is primarily the device at the top of the pole. And not much else is very noticeable on that pole. You can see where it is right outside the Law College Apartments. So,
It's not as scary as originally thought.
yeah, I mean, obviously there's, there's concerns, I think, this hearing's designed to address those. And I don't want to speak prematurely.
Right.
But thank you for holding up. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public that would have a question of either witnesses? Okay, seeing none, we'll move the exhibits as marked into the record. We will conclude this hearing this evening, and then I'll turn it over to the chair to consider with the board whether they want to make a decision this evening.
All right, so, do we want to make a decision this evening, or our option is we could always vote at our next meeting?
Correct.
And do we have a time frame to make our decision, correct?
You have 45 days from today, but we could certainly do it in your next meeting.
All right.
We could do that by way of a formal written decision in order.
What is the consensus from the board? How would you,
I'm ready to make a decision.
I'm ready to make a decision tonight.
I was looking at me. My only concern was just with respect to the lack of testimony on the FCC's.
Right. No, it's, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a good question. So you're, Ms. Fresco, you're comfortable with voting this evening?
Yes.
Whatever way we go? All right, so, can you craft a motion?
I believe there's one in your
Is there?
packets. Is there? Yeah, in the packets. And you would also want to consider, when you find that, imposing the condition relative to only one cell on the pole.
Yeah, you'd want to move to adopt Resolution 2019-14 amended to
Include the condition that there'll only be one cell on the pole. And there's also a question as to whether the board wants the shroud, the shrouded piece of equipment at 14 or 16 feet.
Well, let's take that quickly. Is there any preference on the height of the shroud? It's not the conversation I thought I'd be having today.
Right, higher the better.
I'd say the higher the better, too.
So,
Does 16 work if they impose 16?
Just ask for a point of clarification, are you talking mounting height or top of the drone?
I'm talking as we advertise it above grade.
So mounting?
Correct.
Center line?
Yes.
At 16 feet?
Yes.
That should not
That's what we advertise. That would be my preference to keep it that way.
there you go.
Okay.
So then that's the way we'll go with that.
Okay, proceed.
All right. So we're cobbled enough together to make that a motion?
So I believe the motion would be to adopt Resolution 2019-14 with the
You don't have to read the conditions because I have a carve out there.
2019-14.
All right, so we're going to make a vote on 2019-14. Before we vote, any questions? Comments? Public? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Did anyone make
We gotta
a
make a motion in a
motion?
second.
So moved.
Motion
I
is
can't make a motion.
So moved.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any comments? Any comment from the public? My apologies for getting ahead of the game there.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One night.
The chair votes aye. Passes 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, the board will have a formal decision that will be issued at its next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll now move to CU 19-02. This is New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, DBA AT&T Mobility, requesting conditional use approval under Part 6, Section 27, 1656, 3A1C of the Township zoning ordinance as amended, related to wireless telecommunications, tower-based facilities, and rights-of-way. Applicant proposes for this site to use the approximately 23-foot 4-inch existing wooden utility pole owned by Verizon, located at 510 East Street Road's right-of-way in the Township's R-2 district as a small cell telecommunications facility by attaching a small coffee can style antenna with ancillary radio equipment to it. The installation of the proposed antenna will extend the approximate height of the pole to 25 feet, 7 inches. The associated radio equipment will be housed with a concealing shroud at a height of 16 feet above ground so that no equipment will be placed on the ground within the right-of-way. Again, we have Mr. Kuche here representing the applicant. We'll mark the following exhibits. B1 is the application with addendum. B2 is the proof of publication, which I just read. That ran on Thursday, March 7th, 2019, and Thursday, March 14th, 2019. B3 is the posting of the property. That was posted on April 11th, 2019, and B4 is the Township Zoning Review dated April 8th, 2019.
Does he have a packet to?
Yes.
Your packet is going to be quite similar to the one that was previous?
I'm going to hand out pre-marked exhibit packets. It's going to be quite similar, little differences in terms of propagation plans, things of that nature, but by and large, it's going to be
the same deal. We'll mark that collectively as A1, and as you're dispersing that for the board, I'm going to ask if there's anyone in the public that would like to make themselves a party to this application. Okay, seeing none. And Mr. Gucce, as you're doing that, because you put on the bulk of your testimony in the hearing for 19-01, I'm going to ask that you incorporate that by reference into this hearing and then just simply tweak it for the proposal as advertised.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the record, the collective exhibits under A1 are 1 through 11, and they are the same as I read into the last hearing record.
So as noted, Mr. Solicitor, I would request that the previous record for the previous application be incorporated into this record, and what I will do then is I will curtail my my summation to only the differences between, and point out the differences in the exhibits between the two. Everything else would remain the same. This particular wooden utility pole is owned by Verizon for this application, and as noted, it's located at 510 East Street Road. This is again in the right-of-way, which is in the R2 residential district. We are seeking conditional use, and all of the need bases, as per the prior application, hold for this one, capacity and in-building coverage. I would note in Ms. Berman's testimony, Exhibit A2 is a different pole attachment agreement. That one is actually with Verizon. Yes, if you turn to A2, it's with Verizon as the licensor. And everything else in, and I'm sorry, the Exhibit A3, the structural analysis, was for this particular location, but wind gusts of at least 100 miles per hour would be withstood by the pole replacement. Again, that would be the summation of Ms. Berman's variation on her testimony. Ms. Berman, did you listen to my augmented summation of your testimony? And would you change any of it? And would you adopt it as your own? The board has any questions for Ms. Berman?
Any questions for Ms. Berman? No, sir.
Thank you. Our next witness would be our radio frequency site designer, Mr. Brock Riffle. Mr. Riffle, again, would testify as he did in the last hearing. The differences would be Exhibit A6 is different, the propagation plans. Obviously, these are propagation plans from this particular site, this particular pole replacement. Exhibit A8, obviously the plan itself is different. It's a different location with different specifications. Now, we did revise this as well and sent in revised plans, Mr. Solicitor, to the township. So I want to go through that briefly and talk about some heights, given our discussion with the last application. The current pole, wooden pole as it exists, is 24 feet 4 inches. The new proposed pole replacement would be 43 feet in height, okay, the Verizon pole. Antenna would be affixed to the pole at the top and would have a top height of 45 feet 7 inches, again, well, about 5 feet below what is permitted by the township. The equipment, again, would be on the side, everything painted to match the pole, but the equipment would be at a center line of 8 feet 8 inches. Now, this is due to the fact that there are telco lines, there are already existing utility lines at those various heights at the 16-foot marker. So this was the first available height above ground that we could use. Everything else would interfere with existing lines and utilities. So that is at a center line of 8 feet 8 inches. The disconnect, the antenna powered disconnect on the pole would be at a center line of 6 feet 2 inches. Finally, the only other difference between the two applications would be Exhibit A9, which are photo simulations for this particular site, showing the current situation and then the proposed with the antenna and the equipment. That being said, Mr. Riffle, did you listen to my summation of your testimony?
I did.
Would you change any portion of that?
I would not.
Would you adopt it as your own?
I wouldn't.
Any questions that the board may have?
Is it safe to have pole that high? I mean, if you have like strong winds or what have you, is that considered safe?
Yes, it is, and as noted, in the structural analysis that is provided in your packet, Exhibit A3, it will withstand, in fact, so your ordinance notes wind gusts of up to 100 miles per hour. And I would like to point out, since we're on the subject, if you look at that particular exhibit, it is noted that per this analysis with the 2018 IBC, it can withstand 3-second gusts of wind of up to 114 miles an hour. So it does have the proper rating. The pole that is planned to be replaced is the proper class pole, which is for, with these wooden poles, they go by classes for structural integrity. So I believe we're putting in a Class 2 pole in this particular situation, which is compliant with your ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
My same question from the prior hearing would apply, although this isn't anywhere near living conditions, so I'm going to reserve my question.
And Mr. Kuche, just to clarify for the record, we advertised that the existing pole was 23 feet 4 inches. And what is the total height after install?
The height of the pole, Mr.
Height of the
Solicitor?
pole with the cell.
With the antenna.
Yeah, affixed to the top of it.
That top height with the antenna will be 45 feet 7 inches.
Now, you're going to have to give me you're going to have to explain to me what's the difference, because I don't have the benefit of the amendment. So I was not aware of that. But we advertised that once you do the install for the small cell on top of this pole, we were looking at 25 feet 7 inches. And that was per the addendum that was submitted with the application.
Correct.
So just could you please clarify for the board why we have that difference and what's the basis for that?
Mr. Riffle will handle that question.
Sure. The basis for the height increase is to actually increase the coverage footprint. So if you look on the propagation map, you'll see that that area is actually a challenged area. You'll see some spotty coverage. So typically a small cell is to address capacity. In this case, it's also to address a coverage hole, a coverage need. So the higher we can get that antenna, the broader reach that we can get.
Understood, but in your simulation, are we using a larger cell? Or are we still talking about a 2-foot cell?
Oh, no, the antenna is still the same size.
So what explains the difference?
The pole replacement is actually larger.
So we're putting in a new pole?
Correct.
This is not on the existing pole?
Correct, replacement.
Okay. Okay. Would you be amenable to the same 2 conditions as imposed on the 19-1 application?
I believe the one condition that I don't believe we can meet the one condition imposed that the equipment be mounted at a center line height of 16 feet because of what I explained earlier. There is and will be existing utility lines running at that height. So our first available height, Mr. Solicitor, is at the, I believe, 8 foot 8 inch height. That is the highest we can go. That is the highest that the landlord allowed us for availability.
And that's because of the new pole, because we advertised 16 feet?
No, it's not because of the new pole, it's because of the existing telco lines that will be replaced on the new pole at the same height.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are bound by what the landlord requests of us and what they make available to us.
Okay, so we'll note that difference, and the board will have to consider that. And then what about the other condition?
Which was?
That we're not going to put any further cells?
Absolutely, agreed.
And also, one thing that I neglected to ask, but I did have a conversation with you prior to the hearing, applicant will comply with the review letter that was submitted on the 8th of April from our zoning officer?
Yes, we believe that those are appropriate conditions.
Okay, so with that being said, does the public have any questions of this applicant? Yes, sir. If you could come forward and identify yourself and your address.
Yes, hello. Bob Wells, Howell Avenue, Warminster. He said that these towers work better at the highest elevation. And why aren't they installed at the highest elevation in the township, which would be Warminster Park? Is it not that the old air base, is that not the highest elevation in the township?
It's a good question. So these small cells are actually very surgical where we have to place them. So they have a cell radius of, let's say, 2 to 3 blocks or 0.3 miles. So we're choosing the pole that is closest to the location that we need to address. Since they only have a range of 0.3 miles, we can't relocate that location to the tallest spot in the township. Additionally, we already have macro sites that are blanketing the area through taller antennas, 150 feet, for example. This is more to just a very specific area that we're trying to address a very specific need. And like I said, it's either capacity driven, or in this case, it's both capacity and coverage. But even still, it's limited to roughly 0.3 miles in range. Does that help? Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move the exhibits as marked into the record. We'll close our hearing for this evening. The board has 45 days to render its formal decision, and I'll turn it back to the chair to decide with the board whether they would like to make a same-night decision or not.
All right, so before we, can I ask you a question, Mr. Arnazzi? The significant differences in what we advertise and what we're talking about, does that pose any issues for us, or is it just?
That doesn't pose it's more of a preference thing for the board. We did put the public on proper notice as to the nature of the relief that was being sought. The difference in what we advertised and what is being presented here this evening, or that was put forward in the amendment, while that is a difference, it does not trigger any additional zoning relief that's required. Okay. So we'll treat those as oral amendments, and you can go forward.
Thoughts, comments? Do we want to?
So just so to clarify.
Yes.
These antennas that you're putting on poles, you can't just put them in areas, in certain areas, like he said, the park, which is high, or industrial areas or what have you. they have to be in certain spots because of the service. Is that correct?
Yeah, they go into the high need areas, as Mr. Riffle testified. They're, to use the term, surgically chosen to address particular deficiencies in very particular areas. It's a 0.3 mile radius that you're getting from these sites generally. So these aren't the macro sites that you see, these 100, 120-foot towers that do a blanketed coverage. These are to address very specific needs in more dense areas or more higher trafficked areas, if you will, both cellular and possibly, road traffic. So correct. Utilizing park property that is, a mile away is not going to attain our coverage objectives, and we wouldn't waste your time with that.
Do you usually try to stay out of residential areas?
Well, interesting.
Neighborhoods and that.
Right, interestingly enough, and Mr. Riffle can correct me if I'm wrong, those areas, oddly, are the most dense areas in building, folks using, going unplugged, cutting the cord, so to speak. So those areas are very behind, and this particular solution helps, as opposed to another macro site. These help those areas, those residential areas, to get into the homes, to have people utilize. So yes, these are actually used in residential areas quite often.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? All right.
I mean, again, the biggest difference between this one and
Location.
the previous one was, location, and this is, it might affect a couple birds or something.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead, and I'm seeking a motion to approve Resolution 2019-15.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Any further comment from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
Mr.
much.
Chair.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Stenographer done now?
All right, give it a second, let everybody gather their stuff before we move on.
I was the first one to toss the jacket.
Yeah.
Getting hot.
Stenographer's here, no cursing.
What's that?
Stenographer was here, no cursing.
All right.
He's leaving now, so it's okay.
We're going to move on now to our next topic. It's going to be public comment. Some quick notes on public comment, especially after our last meeting. I'm going to try to, and I know who's up first, and I know who's second also.
Zab and Costello.
Yeah, I guess who's on third, right? Yeah, we all know. We're going to try as much as possible to keep it to our 5-minute guidelines, but I'm not going to time it and be like, you're out of luck. But I watched a Hollywood Board of Supervisors meeting the other night. They cut off Brad Pitt, so I can cut off.
That's right.
Yeah.
Only one take.
So we're going to try to keep it because honestly, last meeting it got ridiculous. So we're going to try to keep it within. When we start getting close to the time, I'm going to let everybody know we're getting close and to start approaching it. Usually it doesn't happen, but I want to be consistent and I want to announce it first. And also, at the end of last meeting, we had an unfortunate situation where people were talking over each other when public comment was happening. If somebody has a public comment that you disagree with, I would prefer that if you have a rebuttal comment that you wish to make as a member of public, that you wait until you have an opportunity to do so at the microphone and not speak over that individual when they're making the comment. If that happens again, I will gavel it down. Everybody has a difference of opinions and they're entitled to them, but we do expect a certain level of decorum. So with that being said, I would like to open public comment, and as the line has formed, I would like to welcome Ms. Bobby Loftus to the microphone.
Good evening. I will not be 5 minutes. I'll be
Not
2.
even timing.
As you know, I'm the elected tax collector. I wanted to remind people that want to pay their taxes in discount. The deadline is April 30th. And because of the holiday, I will have a little bit more flexible hours. In fact, I will be open tomorrow, even though everybody else is off. I'll be open tomorrow from 9 to 12. And on Monday, I will even be open on Monday from 9 to 12. And then Saturday, April 27th, I will be open from 9 to 12. And then on Monday and Tuesday, the 29th and 30th, I will be open 9 in the morning to 6:30 at night. Now, the good news is we've had 70% people pay already.
All right.
Bad news is that leaves 3,000 people. Normally, we collect about 90%, so that leaves about 2,000 people within the next 10 days.
Wow.
So please be patient, the lines will be long. And there's nothing we can do about it. I also just want to mention that I will be, excuse me, I will be out of the office for 2 to 3 weeks. I will have the office covered. I've been in contact with tax collectors from neighboring boroughs who will be covering my office. So if I'm not there and it's a strange person, realize that they are tax collectors from boroughs. We do things different in Warminster than any other township. No other township gives a discount for trash like you guys do. So these people don't know you like I do. So when they ask to see your license, you're supposed to have it anyway. So please, give them the courteous of knowing that they don't know you and they don't know the way we do things, and they are covering for me. So it'll be like a 3-week span. Okay?
Mrs. Loftus, this is the first time that you're not going to be in that office.
In 20 years.
20 years. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
remarkable.
I'm sorry, but,
We hope to have you back as quick as possible.
thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thanks.
Loftus. All right. Next up is Mrs. Lynch.
Jane Lynch, Gorson Drive. Since this is a day that many reports have come out, I would like to make a report on Barness Park. That was supposed to be humor, and I don't think anybody picked it up, but that's okay. All right, let's go through Barness Park history. I wrote all this down so that I wouldn't be over 5 minutes, Mr. Crowley.
Thank you, Mrs.
In the
Lynch.
early 1960s, Christmas Eve, a 3-man board of supervisors passed an ordinance to create a 1/4-acre lots. Mr. Barness donated land for Hart School and Barness Park. Myself, as I said before, I'm a 57-year resident, spent 18 years in the Park and Recreation Board. I'm also very proudly a community activist. My home backs up to Barness Park. A previous Board of Supervisors with their solicitor, Steve Harris, had on their agenda environmental protection zone for Devonshire Court. I was at that meeting, and I asked if the Board of Supervisors at that time would include in that ordinance Barness Park. I'm happy to say they did as such. Norristown Road and York Road, the property was sold on that corner. The new owner probably did not know you shouldn't take any tree down. So unfortunately, they took all the trees down. I went to the supervisors meeting with pictures of all the trees that were cut down, which it was annihilation. I don't think any of you, aside from Mr. McPhillips, was around at that time. The Board of Supervisors and Karen Whitney expressed concern, and a tree ordinance was adopted. I felt extremely pleased that our trees would be protected by this ordinance when it was passed. Why am I here? I'm here because of tree cutting in Barness Park. In 2017, the township removed ash trees in Barness and other parks throughout the township. I asked that the trees in the park behind me be cut down because they were dead trees and in danger. I was told at that time by the landscaping company at that time, who apparently now went bankrupt, could they do this? And they said, no, you have a forsythia bush by a drainage ditch in between my house and my neighbor's. Subsequently, they said they couldn't get any trucks down. So I went and I spent $800 for a landscaper to come in and cut the forsythia down. This year, a tree contractor came in to Barness Park and started cutting trees. Their terminology was cut and drop. I have pictures. I'm sorry, I only have 2 sets, one for the township manager and one for the Board of Supervisors of the property in back of my park. I went to Log College Drive and Gorson at the corner. I also have a picture of the cut and drop trees that are just there. I went up to on Gorson Drive before the little bridge and checked the property back there. It was another cut and drop. I feel very saddened. This park ground, my husband and I and our landscaper have taken care of for all the years that we've lived in this township. As you can see by the pictures, it is unbelievable. With a storm this past week, or this current week, excuse me, 2 more dead trees fell down, one across the creek, one split in half in back of my house. I have been informed by a township official, an employee of the tree cutting company, that they would return. Why am I here tonight listening to your meeting that is now, God bless you, over and almost 2 hours long? Is I want assurance from this board that this tree company will come back. Now, I have pictures, but I don't think they will reach your camera. So the only thing with it is you can see the annihilation and the destruction. An area that my husband and I have lived in and some of my neighbors that we love. That's why we stay here, unless you do reassessment. We want the park to be restored to the beauty it had. So once again, Mr. Schuster, I am asking you, are the tree company, or is the tree company coming back to do a cleanup?
So I know the tree company is coming back. I don't know to which specific areas. There were some areas that were too wet and had problems accessing it. So I don't know the specific areas that are scheduled. But what I can commit to doing is I'd be happy to go out to the site with you and also with Karen, and we can go over what the issues are, and hopefully that would resolve everything.
I don't think that will, but I appreciate your offer. I have given you pictures, and there are only a few of the devastation. If an official from this board told me they would be back, an employee of your township told me they would be back, an employee of the tree company told me they would be back, I understand the weather conditions. I just want assurances. I don't want, we'll take another look. You've already had a look. There's been a walkthrough. I'm giving you pictures. If you want to go on Facebook, you'll see a lot more pictures. I'm asking to make sure they come back and don't leave this mess. It is unbelievable. And I'm saying to you right now, look at the pictures. Once again, I'm asking you, are they coming back?
Again, I know they are coming back. I don't know if it's this specific area. So again, I'd be happy to walk out there with you, with Karen Whitney, and I can give you a direct answer to that question then. I just can't do it right now.
What were they contracted to do?
Cut down the trees. These are trees that were infected with the emerald ash borer.
Removal.
And removal.
I'd have to look at the specific contract, so I don't know what it was in the contract, because it was a couple of years ago, but I just can't give you an answer this second, but I will give you an answer.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mr. Iannosi, do you have an opinion about that legally?
No, just to Mr. Monroe's point, I think we have to look at the contract, and we have to see what was the term of the contract, the scope of the contract. I can tell you that in other communities that have faced tree removal as a result of the ash borer, they are just doing the cut and drop, and there is no return.
May I say to you, excuse me,
Fine.
may I say to you, these are not ash. These are the last priority of the trees in this park. They're dead.
So, okay, but even more to the point, look, we have to look to the contract, we have to look to the scope of the contract, and was it just a cut and drop or a cut, drop, and pick up? And that's something that we should be able to get back to in short order.
I was told by Ms. Whitney last week that they are contracted to clean up.
Okay.
She said there were some areas they were unable to access with heavy equipment to get the logs out, but for the most part,
And that's
they're
why I
contracted
don't
to
want to
clean up.
make any
I didn't see any
commitments about
contract, I
going
haven't
to
seen
the site.
anything. That's just what I was told.
But is it okay if I reach out to you next week and set up a time to come visit?
I am home on Mondays and Thursdays.
Mondays and Thursdays. And we also have time to talk about reassessments.
Well, if you have a couple of hours,
Don't go there.
perhaps I can get all the seniors, come to my house on Monday or Thursday, 1052 Gorson Drive, and we'll have a chat about how much our taxes are going to go up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Have a happy Easter and a happy Hanukkah.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lynch. And who's on third? Come on down, you're the next contestant.
Well, I'm back again.
Good evening.
Ellen. I'm back again. Last month, I had asked about having updates, which I thought I would get updates on what's going on with our famous Wawa place. And first of all, for the people at home, I want them to realize that we are not asking for anything that was not promised to the zoning board or at the time of the passing of the ordinances for them to get the permits, whatever they had to do to build. It's all things that they agreed upon before. So it's things that they're not doing or doing differently now. So just because some people have said, oh, what do you want more and more? No, we don't want anything more than like 10 years ago. This has been going on, I think, for 9 years. I looked up, 2011 was one of the first meetings with Wawa. Anyway, do you have an update? That's what I came for, because I called 2 people and they didn't return calls. Yeah, you know who you are.
I was in New Orleans.
And I had the flu.
Well, you're not sick now, though.
No. I knew you would be here tonight.
I wouldn't have been here if I had gotten an answer. So anyway, what's so funny?
I was trying to figure out what the 2 initials were for you.
Oh.
And he said LM, and I forgot.
Yeah.
So good evening. When we last reported at the last meeting, we indicated that we would be reaching out to Wawa.
Right.
And we would be trying to address this issue. We're still in the process of doing that. Wawa will be ultimately scheduling up some time with the township and the township's team to address this issue. Your comments and the comments of others have been heard, and they'll be afforded certain weight, and we will update you at the appropriate time when this is going to be discussed at a public meeting. But at this juncture, I have nothing further to discuss.
It's been 5 months. There is a court order. How come they're not, first of all, the township here, all of you supervisors, they were saying last month that it was up to the zoning officer to order them to take, I don't care what they do with the rest of the things, they're okay. It's only the 15-foot monster, a 14-foot, whatever height it is, it's higher than a tractor trailer, because one of the people here saw a tractor trailer going down there the other day, or other week. So they do, and then they have to back up, and all the people are behind them. It causes a mess.
Yeah, no, I just want to interrupt briefly, though. At this juncture, we have nothing to report.
Okay, well, I'm going to then bring up, why isn't the township doing something with the court order?
And again, with all due respect, we are.
What?
We have heard the concerns.
It's been 5 months now.
Okay, well,
How long?
This is my second meeting on the issue.
Okay,
so
but
since
you don't know Wawa.
No, with all due respect, I've spent plenty of time researching this. I understand there's a court order. I understand the terms of that court order. I understand the concerns that you have and the concerns of other residents. I can assure you that this board has heard all of that, will afford the weight that all that deserves, and we will broker a resolution to the satisfaction of the board and Wawa, and we will resolve this accordingly.
Okay, well, how come then, because when they got the property, they were, the only way they got the access on the right of the way of the neighborhood, on the buffer zone, was that nothing over 8 foot would go down that road. They agreed to it at the time. It's worked fine. And then I came home April 1st, and here at midnight, I found a budget truck backing into the thing at Wawa 2 or 3 times. Deliberate, it looked that way, because why would it back in? And I took pictures. I sat there because I was coming home from a hospital. That's why I was out that hour, right after midnight on the 2nd of April. Then they fixed the height bar there. Did you know that? Okay, I'd like to know, what did they do? Did anybody approve this after they put it, they straightened it, the one at the bank? I have pictures of it straight. Within a week, it's back over again, and it's, do you, any of you know what the condition of it is now?
And again.
No. See, nobody's interested in looking into this, but.
No, that's not fair. You're asking very particular questions.
Well,
in an
wait.
effort, please, I've listened to you. In an effort to make sure that we can cogently and competently answer these questions, we need to meet with Wawa.
You also should meet with the neighbors that were in parties to the thing when we started. 'cause
At this
not one of
juncture,
you
the only
people know.
party to the court-approved stipulation is Wawa. That's why it is important, and that's why I noted the board is mindful.
Well, when I talked to the courthouse in Doylestown, they said since it was from the zoning board and we were parties to the issue at the zoning board, that we should still be parties to it because it's a court order from the zoning board filed it. Now, that's what a person here said.
That's not accurate.
But-
What ended up happening, briefly, just so this is, I think, an education piece, when you were made parties before the zoning hearing board in opposition of the application, you were able to file an appeal to the court or to intervene in the appeal. That didn't happen. So the court order, the only 2 parties to the court order are the township and Wawa.
Okay.
Now, with that being said, the comments of the residents on this issue have been heard by the board, will be afforded to wait, and as we negotiate that, because that's what this is a negotiation to resolve this issue, because there are only 2 parties. And the 4 corners of our engagement with Wawa is that court order.
All right, then answer a question. When they were writing up the court order, Mr. Schuster had two of the residents there. I was one of them. We helped write that whole thing up, and we were implied that we were still involved in it. I think it was a sneaky thing for Mr. Schuster not to say, you're not part of it after
Well,
this.
I'm going to stop you there, because again,
Right.
this is the township that's working
Okay.
in earnest to address this issue
All
and
right,
to
well,
resolve it.
here's
So
the
with all
thing.
due respect, all I'm going to ask is that you withhold
No,
any further
I
comment.
have a right to talk when I come here, and I have a
Right,
question.
but this is more of a
How-
debate, this isn't comment.
How-
Allow us to meet with Wawa, allow us to present those questions, and then allow us to bring this at the appropriate time to a public meeting wherein the board can
We've
discuss.
heard this one before, even last month, and still there's nothing done in a month. Now, nothing's.
And that
we
would be
keep
my
saying this,
recommendation.
But nothing is being done. So how come, and why not? And here's the thing that I pulled up today. It was in the paper tonight, not just now, it was back in 12/18. James Crowley. Quite frankly, I expect better of the group. He's talking about Wawa and taking them to the court, the thing. Expect them. Let's see here. We have great companies in this town that support youth leagues, blah, blah, blah. Officials of the township will take legal action to get the steward to abide to the zoning regulation. That includes paperwork with the district judge
5
that
years
calls
ago.
for $500 a day.
Lanier,
fine.
how's that relevant?
Well, no,
Why
if
are you
it's-
opening up old wounds?
Well, no, if it's including a fine, then why aren't we doing that? We could get rich. We wouldn't be so broke.
There's a 5-minute
$500
timeline
a
for public
day?
comment. You're at 7 minutes.
All right, well, I want to know why, when I'm told that I would be informed. And a month later, nobody's done anything.
That's not a fair statement. One of the things
All right,
that
what
I
has
think
been
is
done?
imperative, that we have to recalibrate on this issue, is we have to stop with the misinformation, stop with the hyperbole, and focus on a result orientation that has not been done candidly to date. And that is going to include a meeting with Wawa, wherein the board's directives and their concerns, as evident by what has been shared with the public, are addressed. So give us that
Well, what are you-
opportunity.
what are you
Give us
looking
that
for?
opportunity.
What are you
and then we
debating
will.
with Wawa, discussing with them?
No, it's not a debate. We're going to address this issue.
What issue?
The issue of the height bars, the issue as to access, and other concerns that have been brought to the township's attention relative to this access point.
Well,
And the
access
traffic
is al-
circulation.
It's already been done.
And the traffic circulation on the site. But.
Well, the site, I don't care about that, but.
Well,
how
other
come
people
they were-
do. Other people do.
Well,
And so
I-
with that being said, I'm respectfully going to request, allow us to meet with Wawa, allow us to get that information, and then we will discuss it at a public
Then
meeting at the
please-
appropriate time.
Please answer, why were they permitted, when you're so safety conscious, to put a height bar in that's like 15 feet high? It has never been inspected, was never approved, they just did it, and they're allowed to keep it. All we've asked for is to lower that down to the 10-foot, below the 10-foot. The other height bars, we don't care, leave them there. We don't care
No, but I
about them.
assure you, all that is going to be considered and discussed, but at
But
this
it's been
juncture,
5
you're asking,
months.
the clock starts now.
Oh, that's not fair. The
What?
clock stopped and started in November.
No, please, just give us just give us the amount of time that we need to sit down with Wawa and to address these
How
issues.
long will that be?
We're anticipating a meeting, I would say, within a month's time? And you know what, in fact, I'll do one better. We'll ensure a meeting with Wawa within a month's time.
But what, if they wanted to put tire vehicles down that road again, then they have to give our buffer zone back to us, because that is how they got it. And it was agreed upon before they even put a shovel in the ground. That, now last month you had 2 people come out, never saw them for 10 years. All of a sudden they came out and the one person was concerned about her high jack truck or something going down the road. Well, they got other entrances. That's how they come in. When you come to a bridge or something in another place that's low, you don't have them move the garage or move the bridge, and you just listen to laws. And now the bar has been bent over again within a week, and it's got a big dent in it. What's interesting is there's a stop sign there. Now, if some vehicle stopped and then turned and hit the bar and dented it that badly and pushed it all out again, how did it do that from a stop within 2 or 3 feet, turning a little bit of a corner? Okay, also, the pictures I have that night is this budget truck, and I can show any of it, it's on my phone, backing into the bars. Now, did the police get a report for this last one?
So you're asking questions that I
No,
don't have
I'm
answers
asking
to.
right now.
But that's not, this isn't a roving inquiry. I'm just, please, give us the opportunity to meet with Wawa.
We did give it to
Okay.
you last month,
Okay.
and this is
We're
what,
gonna- we're gonna meet-
here, nothing done. Not one of you has done a thing.
That's not a fair assessment, again.
Yes, it is.
That is not.
Then what have you done?
I just, again, at
Now, what
the
have you
risk,
done?
at the risk of being redundant, we have reached out to Wawa.
I know.
We've identified and shared with them the township's concerns, as evident by what we've heard from the residents, and we're going to schedule a time to meet and resolve this issue accordingly.
What track
Between the two
concern,
parties.
other than the higher vehicles? Why did they put a height bar that we're not supposed to be seeing over the 10-foot fence? Why did they put that in illegally and allowed to keep it there?
And at this juncture, I don't have anything further to say, and I would just.
I don't either, but I think somebody ought to have enough backbone to say it comes down, because your
We're
zoning
at 10
officer,
minutes, Ella.
your zoning
Listen,
officer
listen.
said
Yes.
that it was up to the supervisors to say for it to come down, and he would order it down. But none of you will order it. But then you
I don't
sit
have
here-
that power, LM. Here's the thing.
Now, wait,
He's
last
the
month you
lawyer.
said that,
He
but
is
they
the
said
lawyer,
that.
ma'am. He is the lawyer. We are taking our lead on what is, a lot of people say this, a lot of people say that, and it looks like there's been misinformation. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's not a matter of, I can't go out there and proclaim height bar, come down. I don't have that power.
The zoning
That's simply,
officer, it's not inspected, it's high, it could fall down
It's
and kill
not
somebody.
within my
None of you
purview.
have cared. And the other
and then
thing-
that's another, see, every time you take a shot at everybody cares. We
Well,
all
we
have
don't.
jobs
It's
and
not-
lives, we don't drive by there every day, but we care. We do care that you come.
But you've been aware of
that-
it for months.
And the way the business world works is we don't call one day and Wawa shows up the next. It simply doesn't happen that way. And I
When
wish
we
it
talked to-
could.
When we talked to Wawa,
Yeah.
they did work, and they did. They will listen. Now, do we have to go back into it and go back down to Wawa and start it over
I
again?
would say,
Because this is how
please
you
listen
guys
to
got into it
Mr. I knows
initially.
he's.
And that's when
advice.
Mr.
Can I
Schuster
ask-
took over, but we
can I
were
ask a
doing
question?
fine without him.
To our solicitor, if, like a normal zoning violation of things of that nature, and, or an ordinance violation, the zoning officer or the police officer goes out and issues a citation. This isn't the same type of scenario, is it, or is it?
It's similar, but what we're trying to do is we're addressing the underlying issue to resolve it, okay? Again, the idea of attacking this by virtue of a zoning citation, that's putting a Band-Aid over a gaping hole, and that's not my recommendation. So we have a willing dance partner in Wawa. They've indicated that they're going to meet our result-oriented approach with their own, and we're going to come to a result. And the board's is going to discuss it at the appropriate time, and we're going to move forward.
As long as nothing is over the 10 feet, which is what the court order said,
But I think,
and what the zoning thing.
and correct me if I'm wrong, I think your issue is that while, these things are going on, there's no repercussions on Wawa's side.
Right.
So
They just
I mean,
do what they want.
So my recommendation is that it is being worked on. So
My
let me
thing
just say,
is,
well,
why don't they put it
Let
down?
me make a suggestion, is that if for some reason this gets pushed off by Wawa past a month's
That's always an
time,
arrow in our quiver.
then
Yep.
what we can do is we can start the process with issuing the
As
citations.
appropriate, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, the other things are fine. If they don't have those little hang bars, nobody cares. But they should be written on what the height is, and nobody has a warning on that big tall one, because vehicles go down and now they're stuck. Now with summertime being outside, you hear the trucks, and now they gotta figure out how to get out, which is dangerous. And really, all of you should make sure that they have something there that, no, it should be lowered, because that's what all the exits are. And that's all we're asking, is that one to be lowered. We're not asking for anything else.
And we've gotten that message.
Yeah, I know, but how many, do I have to come next month and say the same thing?
I hope not.
Now, will you inform me when you hear anything?
At the meeting,
Last
right?
month, the attorney that was here said that we should, the solicitor said that we should
So,
be informed and updated.
It'll be on the agenda when there's something.
At the appropriate time, and you're able to come
Well,
forward.
what's the appropriate time?
When we've had the opportunity to address this issue with Wawa, and we've come to a result that's worthy of reporting on or taking action, that will be addressed at a public meeting, and you'll be in
All right, is
attendance, and you'll
anybody-
be able to speak to it at the appropriate time when it's properly before the board.
Is anybody that's meeting with Wawa really knowledgeable to the whole situation? Because not one of you, except, I think, Mr. Kennard, he's the only one that's been around longer with, you people have not been, you have never seen it before.
With all due respect, we're talking about less than 20 pages of documentation and a stipulation that's all but 4 pages. That's the 4 corners of what I need to be mindful of. We have it handled. And
then
we will
how come
represent the
nobody
township
can make them
properly.
take the
We will represent the
unsafe,
township.
uninspected thing down? So if I do something illegal on my property, not one of you can ever touch me for doing it then, because Wawa doesn't do it.
I would not advise that.
And that's not a fair assessment.
Yes, it is.
But
Wawa has never
thank
been
you.
made to take it down. It's 15 foot. Will that fall? Is it up there safely? None of you know it. Nobody inspected it. Nobody even approved it. And they didn't even get a permit. They just did it. And it's against everything. It's been 5 months now. So it is time for somebody to get up and do something.
Got it. Thank you, Ellen. I appreciate it. Is there any other public comment? The chair recognizes the gentleman from the back row for 1 minute, 60, 59.
Everyone else is taking up some time. So Ken Hazelingo Drive, just wanted to remind everybody, we do have an Environmental Advisory Council meeting on Monday. And one thing that I also wanted to remind everyone of is we have some Boy Scouts looking to do some community service badge activity, and I'm still looking for that lumber for the community garden.
There's some on Gorson Drive.
Sorry? I didn't catch that one.
I don't like that.
Oh, yeah, it is.
You're gonna pay for that.
All right, that was good. So.
I'm sorry, Mr.
That's
Lynch.
okay. That was a fun one. Anyhow, we do need some lumber. Some of our beds are in disrepair, and I thought that we would get some help from the board last time. I don't want to mention anybody's names, but they did mention that they might have some access to some lumber for us. So maybe Monday we can resolve that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I appreciate it. Is there any other public comment? Yes, sir. Gentleman in the back row.
Thank you. I had part of your time.
Good evening.
Good evening. Frank Schulkaitis, Lily Road. Okay. I was preparing for the zoning board meeting next week on the 550
Right.
Davisville. Found out that today the application has been pulled.
Yes.
But in doing my preparation, I came to the conclusion that there is something we as a township need to be concerned about that location.
Okay.
Okay. Building was built in 1929. Wirt Company. Wirt was a cohort of Thomas Edison, electronics manufacturing. They merged with Continental Carbon and then started making transistors and such. Okay, and operated there probably up until just a few years ago.
Right.
Okay, one of the things to be concerned about is that electronic manufacturing over the years, especially pre-World War II, used highly toxic cleaning agents, okay, and also heavy metals, okay. And I know in the late 60s, early 70s, they were also doing plating operations, electrochemical plating, which was, again, chemicals and another additional heavy metals. So we're looking at like tin, lead, cadmium, chromium on the site, okay. So any demolition to a facility like that could unleash a lot of hazardous chemicals, okay, and create an environmental disaster, not just for the neighborhood, immediate neighborhood, but we already have water problems in the township from the base. We already have experience with the Paul Oldsmobile site that nobody can do anything with because that's contaminated, okay. It has to be made aware that since CW probably was not cited for anything over the years, okay, because they pretty much ran a relatively clean operation, but there's no indication that they had a situation where they might have had to have been investigated by the EPA. There is no record of any activity against them at that site. So before a transition or passage of that property on to another owner, I would think it would do not just the parties involved in a business transaction, but for the township itself to know what kind of condition do we have on that property that needs to be remediated before we proceed with doing it. Anything gets done on that property, okay? So that was one of the main concerns I found. You know, the thing about the application of the variances and everything, and going through all that, that's pretty much a moot point now since they pulled the application. But the thing that I wanted to offer to the board tonight was that there's a potential environmental disaster on our doorstep, okay? And we need to keep it in the forefront if and when something's going to be done further with that property, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Just my comments, nothing
Thank you.
else.
No, I appreciate
Okay,
them.
all right?
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Is there a requirement, environmental requirements on that? No?
From a zoning perspective?
No, like when they go to sell that property, I mean, because it's up for sale now. Yeah. We'll have to look into it, we'll have to look at it, but I mean, it's an excellent point, I really appreciate you
There is
bringing
a-
it forward.
I forget the name of it. It's Land Recycle Environmental Remediation Standards Act, okay?
Okay.
It's called Act 2 Program.
Okay.
Okay? That would be what they need to look into.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you much.
All right. Mr. Logan, how are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Scott Logan, Sweetbriar Drive in the township. I know sometimes your role is a thankless one, so I'm actually here just to give thanks regarding the same application that Frank just spoke about. Mrs. Davis is here as well. We did have several residents from our neighborhood. Ours is called Casey Highlands. We have a pretty tight-knit neighborhood. We get together in times of need. We've had some misfortune in recent years, and the neighborhood's banded together to support our neighbors in times of need. With this apartment application, we really did come together. But I did want to talk to the board, first of all, again, whatever was done behind the scenes, if anything, just want to thank you. I know that I've reached out, some of you I know on a personal level, others of you may recognize me. I work for a commercial developer. I've been in front of the board for commercial applications. Have no interest in this site in particular, other than that it abuts my neighborhood. But again, thank you for anything you did behind the scenes. We're not naive. As a group, we understand that it's a blighted property. It's zoned residential. We'd like to see it's zoned R1, which is what our neighborhood is. We'd like to see a compliant use, but we understand, we've discussed, we don't expect the town to buy it and make it a park. We're not overreaching, but we felt the application was. So the seller may very well be looking to, continue to market the property. Who knows, the buyer that just pulled his application may come back with a new proposal, and we welcome it. We appreciate that the township offers the building for sketch plan type meetings. This developer did host one of those. Ms. Zimmerman proctored, and I think it went well. I think what frustrated us as a neighborhood is that he disregarded any of our recommendations or requests, and the application came through exactly as he had shown us that night. So that was a little discouraging, but in any case, it's off the zoning hearing for next week. But again, if it does come down the line, and by the way, if anyone at home is on the zoning hearing board and watching, or residents for that matter, we did walk flyers around to both the Southampton and Warminster sides of Davisville. There may very well be 100 or more people next week. We'll try to get the word out the same way we did, but I'm not walking house to house again this week to retract that the
Honestly,
notice.
Scott, before you reached out to me, that sketch sent a red flag up to me. Ms. Frescator and I live in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
First thing I said, wait a minute, call Mr. Crowley, maybe we should talk amongst the board members here about opposing this application. And the board was going to go forward and oppose the application if it had gone forward.
Well, we appreciate it, and we understand, look, we understand that the township's always looking for new revenue stream. Totally get it. And again, being in commercial development, I'm actually typically pro-development. I just think it needs to fit the, the neighborhood. And kind of comply generally. I know that the zoning ordinance for a municipality isn't a one-size-fits-all. Some minimal relief. We think that it would be great if a developer came in, if his reason was nobody can afford to put single-family homes there due to whatever, the asking price, possible environmental concerns. I'm sure, it was built in the 1920s, it's got asbestos. There's a lot of infrastructure costs to build a neighborhood, a cul-de-sac, utilities, et cetera. So he would have a hefty cost per lot before he even started building a home. We get it. So we'd be happy to, at least discuss some relief on lot size, So I think that if we'd started there rather than jumping to an R4 use, which, by the way, let's just say in a hypothetical world, the township rezoned that R4, he still would have required relief because he was proposing 48 units where you're permitted 5 per acre and it's a 5-acre lot. So 25 apartments would be permitted if it were even rezoned to R4, and he was asking for double that. So again, it just threw up red flags for us. I'm glad that the board felt the same way. But we'd love to be a part of, any future discussions on development of that site. We definitely don't want a blighted property to become a nuisance property. So thank you.
I did speak to some of your neighbors, and they were all very, very nice and really happy that we were behind them. Mr. McKee said it was a red flag, and it didn't fit with the structure of the neighborhood either. And I do know you do have a Facebook page for your neighborhood, so maybe if you post it on your Facebook page, we won't have 100 folks.
We can get our neighborhood that way, but the Upper Southampton side, we walked around last week. We had again some neighbors, kids involved. It was just fun to get the word out. What I'll do is I'll post signs in their neighborhood on the stop signs, because really I know it's another township, but we all bleed out into Davisville. We only have 2 choices: Davisville to street or Davisville to county line. And if you add more traffic or any other issues that come with that neighborhood, we are all impacted regardless of township.
No, I got several calls from Southampton, and they were under the impression that the application was for the Acme
Oh, okay.
shopping center.
Yeah.
No. Right.
So, well, thank you. That's all I wanted to say. I
Thank you.
won't take any
Thank
longer.
you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Is there any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on. Consent agenda. For that, let's turn it over to Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight's consent agenda is as follows. Item A is approval of the minutes from your March 21st, 2019 meeting. Item B is approval of a water main easement for the municipal authority through Crossings Park. Item C is appointment of a citizen advisor to the Economic Development Committee. Item D is the annual approval of the Community Assistance Grant Award to the Warminster Symphony. Item E is Hart School redevelopment, release number 19 from escrow in the amount of $59,909.44 as recommended by the engineer. Item F is 366 Hawthorne Street stormwater escrow closeout in the amount of $3,002.78. Item G is 444 Jacksonville Road, legal and engineering escrow closeout in the amount of $4,111.51. Item H, Home to Suites, legal and engineering escrow closeout in the amount of $24,642.11. And item I, Steak and Shake, legal and engineering escrow closeout in the amount of $10,053.07.
All right. One question. Item C, the appointment. Do we have the name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I understand he had been attending some meetings.
He did come to the last meeting.
Okay.
Our EDC appointee. Do the name?
I'm trying to get it here in the packet. There should be a...
Chuck. Yep. Chuck, I'm blanking on your last name. I was trying to hide that fact by asking the manager. The manager has let me down.
I'm sorry.
And so, We're going to appoint Chuck to the EDC if the board agrees.
Chuck Kerper.
Thank you. Mr. Herper, I knew it all along. So, any questions for Mr. Schuster on the consent agenda?
Well, how about how soon is Steak and Shake coming? I'm sorry.
Oh, they're hiring. There's a sign out front that they're
Okay.
hiring, yeah.
Soon, yes.
Yeah, we
I don't
haven't,
know. No
we have
other
not
knowledge.
heard any official news that I'm aware
I
of.
assume when they do the second grand reopening, they'll let us know.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question for Mr. Kenner. The Hawthorne stormwater escrow release, everything's in order over there? I know there were some issues prior.
I wasn't aware of any other issues, but no, that's.
Prior.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
been
that's all been
resolved?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. We're going to motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye, passes 5-0. All right, finance report?
Finance report, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve the March transfers, also the supplemental bill list dated March 29, 2019, in the amount of $545,509.79, and the bill list dated April 18th, 2019, in the amount of $1,320,969.46.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes 5-0. All right. March financial statement, Mr. Schuster?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are generally continue to track to our budget. Of course, every time I say that, please remember that tracking to budget does mean a very sizable deficit, which we anticipate occurring. We do anticipate that as the year goes on and we decide to make our pension payment, that making that contingency payment into the police pension fund would not be something we would be financially able to do. Also, I would anticipate requesting at some point later on in the year the transfer of some or all of the funds in the operating reserve over to the general fund. But again, we are generally tracking to budget right now.
Okay.
I have a question. I've been hearing a little bit of chatter about possibly hiring staff. I mean, we're in no position to hire staff, correct?
Well, every
In
time-
any department.
Every time a position becomes available, we look at it. So that's where it stands right now.
But we're not actively out looking to hire staff.
There is nothing open right now. The only hiring that we've done recently, I believe, is mostly in the library. The library because of the nature of the business, they hire a lot of part-timers, and as soon as they find full-time work, they move on. But these are part-timers without benefits, for the most part.
So the way you're seeing things right now, and I'm seeing them the same way, by the end of the summer, we're going to be moving that money from operating reserve into general fund, along with using the rest of our fund balance to get through the rest of the year, or a huge portion of it.
Yeah, I can't speak to the exact timing of it because we'll see what happens with other revenue streams, but I do anticipate at some point during the year we would have to do that, yes.
Okay, I'm concerned about next year.
Any other comments or questions on the financial statement? All right, Mr. Schuster, Budget Amendment 2019, number 1, Resolution 2019-13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, the second-class township code allows for you to amend the budget after the first 3 months of the year have passed. This is the first budget amendment we are requesting for 2019. The items that we are addressing are as follows. First off, we're making a recalculation of the pilot revenues that have come in. With the budget that you adopted, when it was originally crafted, had the general fund mill rate much higher, so the pilot funds were distributed proportionally based on that mill rate. Since the mill rate was not actually raised, we have to redistribute. So what happens is there's a decrease in the amount of pilot funds flowing into the general fund and an increase flowing into the other funds. The second thing to be aware of, or probably the biggest thing on here, is a transfer from the general fund to the fire fund for approximately $72,000. If you recall, this was to keep the fire companies whole, since the workers' comp payment is now being made out of the fire fund. You did not raise the millage last year, but instead elected this year to move funds over from the general fund. The pilot revenue, which I spoke about earlier, does touch on other funds, such as the ambulance fund, the fire fund, library fund as well. Also in the general fund, there are some minor transfers. There was an increase in bonding costs because we had not anticipate 2 board members becoming treasurer and assistant treasurer, so we had to put those costs in there as well. And to compensate for that, we did reduce the amount, the budgeted amount out of the contingency pension payment because we don't believe we'll be able to make that payment anyway. So what we're trying not to do is transfer anything from the general fund at this point. The only other items to be aware of is Park and Rec Fund. There was a appropriation from the tree bank escrow for mostly continued removal of dead trees, dead and diseased trees. And lastly, in the sanitation fund, the budget that was adopted did not mirror the contract that we approved with Mascaro. The contract was approved late in the year, so we couldn't get the budget updated in time. So the amendment just updates the revenue, the anticipated revenue, and the costs for that service to be in line with what the contract actually is.
Okay, so I have a question. Let's back up a second to where you mentioned a few times that we're, instead of taking money from general fund, we're taking it from what was proposed to be put into the pension fund.
So when you do a budget amendment, you have a choice of where you take the money from. You can either, if you're going to increase an expenditure in one line item, say like a transfer over to the fire fund, you have to either decrease another expenditure line item, or you have to make another appropriation from fund balance. What I'm saying is there's about $500 some odd thousand in a line item for that contingency pension. We're reducing that expenditure rather than take it from fund balance. At the end of the day, when the year gets all wrapped up, honestly, it's not going to make a difference one way or the other. It'll wind up it'll all balance out in the end.
But even at year's end, I know I'm getting off subject here, we're still going to be using the smoothing method. Still going to be shortchanging the pension fund.
Based on the budget and the mill rate that was adopted, I would not recommend making that contingency payment, as I believe it would, at best, present cash flow issues, at worst, really have us run out of money.
All right. Sounds like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul here. And to the point to the fire fund, we're going to have to increase that millage next year to cover this. I don't think their workman's comp is going to go down. Never seen that happen before.
So unless there's any other questions, I guess I would ask for a motion to approve Resolution 2019-13.
Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions, comments? All right, seeing none. Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, chair votes aye. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, there is no unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Item A, consider award of duty tow bid. Mr. Schuster?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, we did go out to bid for a third time for the duty tow contract. 2 bids were received. Up until yesterday, we believe that the high bid was a valid bid. However, information was passed along to us that the winning bidder was operating in a location which did not have appropriate permissions, did not have a UNO, and is contrary to zoning. After conferring with the zoning officer and having a conference call with our solicitors, we have decided to recommend not accepting that bid and disqualifying it as non-compliant. The other bid that was received was likewise not compliant for other reasons. So the recommendation that we are making is to reject all bids.
Questions?
This is the third time.
This is the third time, and unless the board has a desire to, I don't intend to revisit this anytime soon.
Seems futile at this point.
Well, at this point, we can't get a compliant bid, and after 3 tries, Einstein said the definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over again,
Right.
expecting a different result. I think it's time to stop this insanity.
I agree. I think we should stay on the multiple hauler rotation and move on.
I agree. I was always opposed to it, perhaps on sentimental grounds, but I was, and I think at this point, it's just, it didn't work out. I appreciate the initiative that the administration took in looking at different ways to raise revenues, but beyond not just the impact it would have on individuals, the impact it's having on the time that the administration is spending on it is simply not worth it. So with those two things in mind, I also think we should just move on.
Agreed.
Do we need to take action to reject?
Yeah, that was my
I would
question.
request you pass a motion to reject all bids.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Any further comment from the board? Because I know this has been a hot topic. I'll see comment from the public if anybody wishes to make public comment on this. John?
John Priobus, 674 Joseph Avenue. The decision's probably the correct one. The other question that I have, and I'm trying not to grind and sharpen the axe too much, but if he's deficient in his, the first guy is deficient in zoning, okay, for towing, then he's still towing for us now. Is that the correct thing for us to do? Should we keep him on, or do we remove him because he doesn't have the proper zoning?
Okay. I don't know the answer to that question. Obviously, it's already come up, but we just resolved the bidding issue today. Early next week, we're going to address that other issue.
Okay.
I could say at the very least, if in fact there is a zoning violation, he's going to have to deal with the zoning officer and find a way to come into compliance or cease the operation. As far as the effect on the rotation, I'd have to look at the ordinance and have a discussion with the solicitor about the impact to that. But I don't know the answer to that, but obviously we're going to have to look at that.
It's my understanding, and I've gotten a determination letter from the zoning officer in the past on a property that we tried to buy to put a towing and storage facility in. We were told that we were not allowed to operate a standalone towing and storage facility. It has to be accompanied by an auto repair shop, an auto body shop, or a car dealership. The towing is an accessory to the repair facility. So just to have a standalone towing company in the township, it's against the zoning law. And if you want to see that ordinance or not the ordinance, the information that I had gotten and the letters, I'll pass it on to you guys.
John, we just disqualified him for what you just said, so we're
Yeah.
well aware.
I understand it, but just letting you know.
Yep.
Thank
Thank you, John. Any other comment from the public? All right.
There's a motion and a second.
Yeah. Any going once, going twice? We're good? Okay. Here we go. There's a motion, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 5-0. Goodbye, single hauler. So, we are now moving on to item B. That's about the, we're going to kick it over to Greg. It's too much to read. Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you recall, at the previous meeting, we rejected all bids for the hauling contract associated with the paving, the road paving program. We went out to rebid. And we did have 2 bids, and we're recommending that you award the triaxle trucking and hauling contract 19-03 to Walter H. McKeon, Inc. in the amount of $110,050 for all items under the base bid.
Is there any questions or comments on this item? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a first and a second. Any comment from the board? Any comment from the public?
Bless you.
God bless you. Seeing none, I'm going to call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you. We're now up to professionals' reports. And Mr. Schuster, please lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have my written report in case you have any questions. The other things I was going to talk about were already mentioned this evening. One is potholes. It is pothole season, so encourage everyone that may encounter a pothole to please report it to the township. We don't have eyes everywhere in the township, so we appreciate any of the reports that we get, and Public Works deals with them as quickly as they possibly can. And the second thing is, and I know Mr. Monroe touched on it earlier, the Civil War reenactment is something I think we're all really looking forward to. That's going to be a very nice event at Warminster Community Park the first weekend in May. We'll caution everyone, they are using firearms, not real firearms, but there will be noise, a good deal of noise, and so don't panic when that occurs. Of course, our dispatch center and police are aware of this, but if you have a chance, please come out. I don't know when something like this is going to be back in Warminster. It's such a great honor to have it, and I hope the community really appreciates it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Schuster? All right. Thank you, sir. We'll now move on to Solicitor's Report. Mr. Iannozzi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our report was submitted to the board on April 12th, setting forth the pertinent matters that our office has been involved in since our last report. That was included in your packets. If the board has any questions, I'll be more than happy to field them.
Any questions for our solicitor? Thank you, sir. Moving on now. Engineers Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have our April 2019 Engineers Report. Couple comments as far as land development projects. We did have a successful or productive staff meeting regarding the 911 York Road Retirement Village community, which is Caddis, with their engineer and developer. I think it was very productive. I believe there was also a meeting then, subsequent meeting with the fire marshal, which is one of the bigger issues as far as access to the site. We went through a timeline. They're trying to shoot for submission to our office, a quick turnaround in May, and be on your June meeting for Planning Commission and Board for preliminary final approval. So that's the goal of the staff, goal of the developer and their staff. So far we're on track, so we're waiting for the revised plans. I know it was a lengthy letter. They said we'll comply to every item and worked everything out with the fire marshal and zoning officer. So I have not heard back from Lidl unless Amanda has, but I know they had a lengthy review as well. I believe the staff was on the same page that they made major changes to that site with the addition of the other building and renovations of their building. So I think they're probably trying to figure out how to work on circulation, address all the technical comments. No big significant issues with that one, just a lot of technical issues with the layout. And then two of the same comments, and I know related to two different projects, but same issue. We've approved a corrective action plan, drainage corrective action plan. That's actually required by the County Conservation District. As you know, when sites, a lot of these basins that don't drain, we get a lot of complaints. I know the board has talked about them over at the Hart School. We've already had a pre-construction meeting they're going to modify that basin. It did not infiltrate. Same issue with Newtown Court, the townhouse development. That same issue, did not drain. So the Newtown Court issue, I actually approved more water coming off of Fox Run Apartments going into their site as part of the corrective action plan. We also had a drainage issue that we met about, and I said, while you're doing that, can you please collect and control that runoff? So that's a positive to that area. I know that whole area, people talk about drainage. We get constant complaints about flooding, groundwater. So that was something I did that doesn't make it in front of the board or the public, but anytime I get a chance to try to control a little more runoff from older developments, he cooperated with us. I gave him some flexibility on the modifications to the basin. But if you see some work going on behind Fox Run Apartments going to that is part of that approval. And that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Kennard?
Just one quick question. Is a lot of that caused by impervious surfaces?
The issue with infiltration?
With the runoff, with water runoff in the township?
In that case, it was, one of the issues was just coming off the roofs of the buildings
Okay.
and the parking lines. And as you know, most of your township is built without stormwater infrastructure
Right.
for detention. Collection maybe, but not stormwater detention, where you're holding back and releasing at a lower rate. That's the biggest problem around here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Township manager announcement of upcoming agenda items. Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no objection, I'll cancel the May 2nd meeting.
No objection.
For the May 16th meeting, hopefully, and I've been saying this for months now, having Warminster Community Park on the agenda. We're still in a holding pattern, waiting on the state to give us approval. And that is really it that I can foresee right now on the agenda. We have no land use in the pipeline that would be on the May meeting.
Okay. Anything else? Nope. All right. Second round of public comment. Residents have another opportunity to comment on any items to the maximum of 5 minutes. Come on up. All right.
So I want to apologize for getting upset with you. Okay? So please understand. And also, I don't know what your last name is.
I nosy.
Hi, Nosy.
I can't read it.
That's all right.
Anyway, I didn't mean to get so upset with you.
LM.
But it was a flash.
They can't hear you at home. Could you
Oh,
speak to the mic?
Okay, it was a flashback of the previous one and how we've been treated.
Understood.
So that's why. Now, a question. You're representing the township. Wawa's going to meet. Who's going to represent the residents? And especially the ones that have been with it for 10 years or 9 years.
Again, remember, the two parties to the stipulation that's now a court order is Wawa and the township.
Okay,
The township has spent the better part, as you noted, 5 months and then some, hearing the concerns and the issues. They will represent the residents in their official capacity.
How come there was no problem for like over a year? And then all of a sudden this became an issue?
I can't speak to.
We don't know. We don't know why that happened.
As far as I can say is the site meeting we had back at the end of the year, beginning of the year, they reference cost of constant repairs and damage, which I believe they documented some of it to the township. That was, I think, why the regional manager came up to have a meeting with the zoning officer, and I attended. But I have concerns over safety. This board and staff are fully aware of that. I'm uncomfortable, regardless of the changes in legality. That's what Bob's trying to say. We have to get to that point because there's safety issues beyond what you're talking about. So they were concerned as well. They brought that up to the zoning officer's attention, and that's where we're at now. So Bob is fully up to
Are you
speed.
thinking then of letting the tractor trailers and all the delivery trucks go down that road too then?
We're not at that point yet at all. In fact,
I mean, I don't see how that can come back because that's how they got that property with the sworn saying at the zoning board under oath that they would not do anything over 8 foot there.
That matter before the zoning hearing board was then appealed to the court and then ultimately settled.
Yeah, but on the court order, it also says 8 foot.
Correct, and so that's going to be the discussion that the township's going to have. We're going to tailor this old settlement to address today's issues and going forward. And so we just need the appropriate amount of time to do that. And again, trust that the township has your best interests in mind, has heard the complaints, has heard the concerns, and will afford them the weight that they deserve when we're negotiating with Wawa.
Okay, because I don't know what the concerns should be so much all of a sudden. I know people wanted to put their jack-up trucks, but that person doesn't even live in the neighborhood. And at 6:30 this morning, you should have heard them honking their horns at something, so it must have been a truck trying to get back again that couldn't get out. But this is what we live with, 24/7. None of you, unfortunately, live there. And it would be nice if somebody did, because then you'd appreciate what we were saying. Okay, but I just wanted to tell you, I didn't mean to get...
Well, that's all right.
But you were
again,
just strictly a flashback, and if you want an explanation at some point, I will tell you. But that's all, and...
We understand.
I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. We appreciate that. Is there any other public comment? All right. Seeing none, let's move on to supervisor's comment. And we'll start off with Mr. Monroe. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just happy Easter. My family, my two girls have been at home during this meeting, actually dyeing their eggs, so they're all ready for the Easter bunny. So just happy Easter to everybody and to your family. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Frescator.
I'd like to thank our professionals for all their input during the meeting today. Gave us very good advice, and I appreciate that. Also like to wish my husband a happy anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
And, 42 years.
Wow.
And my husband, Bob, he's awesome. I can do what I do because of him.
Yeah.
Happy Easter to everybody, and go Sixers.
Yep. Mr. McKee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to wish everyone a happy Easter and a healthy one, and be safe out there. Thank you. That's all I
Thank you,
have.
sir. Mr. McPhillips.
Piggyback off the mark. Happy Easter, everyone. Just want you to know, back in January, the board appointed me the voting delegate to the Peace Task Convention. So earlier this week, the board asked me to go to the convention, so I did go to the convention. I attended a number of different education seminars, networked with supervisors from all over the state, and came home. So if anyone has any questions about the Peace Task Convention, looks like you guys don't, but it was nice. It was a good time. And thank you for sending me out to Hershey.
Well, thank you for going against your will. So, all right. I'll simply say happy Passover, happy Easter, and thank you to everyone this evening, both our public for their participation this evening and our professionals and our administration. Thank you, Mr. Hines. Thank you, Ms. Reed. I think I'm not forgetting anybody, so.
And Mr. Chairman, can we get the air on for the next meeting possibly? By the May meeting?
That I have the authority to do.
The dress down start.
The dress down starts, well, is that a comment on my vest? I mean, so really quickly on that. So I come right from work, right? And I was so happy I brought my nice jacket to work today, and that's where it stays right now. So that's why you get the vest version. So luckily I remembered the tie. But the dress down typically starts June and runs through Labor Day, and then we dress back up. Though it's 2019, if you want to go without a tie, I'm not going to censure you, so.
And yes, the air will be on next time. I believe the next week or two, they'll be out here switching over from heat to air.
There were people sweating. Sweat.
There's people out there sweating, you know.
You're further away than.
But Mr. Schuster, explain to the public and the people here, you have to shut the heat off for the year.
Correct.
In order to turn the air on.
It's a binary system. It's an old system. It's either heat or air conditioning, and a technician has to come out and reconfigure it for the air conditioning. So it's one or the other.
Vintage 1959.
All right. Yeah. With that, may I get a motion to adjourn? So move, we're out of here. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Here we go. Here comes Amanda.